Good morning and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners. We have a zoning meeting this morning. Today is Wednesday, July 17th, 2024, and we are about to begin with the roll call. Mr. Clerk, go right ahead.
Commissioner Barnett, Commissioner Baxter,
Here.
Commissioner Bernard,
Here.
Vice Mayor Marino,
Here.
Mayor Sachs,
Here.
Commissioner Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Woodward.
Here.
Thank you.
Let the record reflect we have a quorum, and Commissioner Barnett is excused from today's hearing. So if I could ask Commissioner Weiss to lead us in an invocation, please.
Please join me. Father, guide us in the duties we are about to perform. Give us wisdom to make the best decisions for all our citizens. Help us to remember that no problem is too small to escape concern and perplexity too great to resist a solution. Amen.
Amen. Very, very good. Okay. Do we have notice?
Yes, we do.
And do we have proof of publication?
Yes, we do.
If I could have a motion to receive and file, please. Very good. That's Mr. Clerk. And if we could have a, since this is a zoning hearing, all witnesses who will testify will please stand and be sworn by our attorney.
Did we do a vote on that motion?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Mayor, may I be
Oh,
recognized?
wait a minute, just 1 second.
Could we restate the vote for the clerk?
Absolutely. Could I have all those for the receive and file? Is anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously, 6-0.
And may we restate the maker and the second?
The maker of the first is Commissioner Bernard, and the maker of the second is Commissioner Baxter. Very good. You keep us legal here. I appreciate that. All right, go right ahead.
Thank you. All those wishing to testify or speak on today's items, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Very good. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Yes, we have actually 2 amendments to the agenda, one labeled amendments to the agenda and an addendum. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth on this, but on the first amendments to the agenda, item number 2, DOA 2023-01761, Adolph and Rose Levy JCC. We have an amendment on our agenda specifically for the staff recommendation to reference both exhibits C1 and C2. An amendment to the agenda for the development order amendment to correct the acreage from 115.62, or that's supposed to be 115.62 acres rather than 115.77. We have an amendment to Exhibit C2, our use limitations, correcting some references to the uses and buildings. On the addendum for the same item number 2, we have an amendment to Exhibit C1, all petition number 3, to have the correct reference to the site plan dates, and an amendment to Exhibit C2, all petition number 2, for again a correction to the reference to the date of the site plan. Moving back over to the amendment to the agenda, we're modifying number 3. DOA 2023-520 Windsor Place MXPD. We have an amendment to Exhibit C1, engineering condition number 13. And if you flip the page, item number 4, we have an amendment to the declaration of restrictive covenants for workforce housing program, an amendment to the memorandum that corrects the added language included. We've added a 20th exhibit to item number 4, and it's attached in the backup material and reflected in the chart below. On the regular agenda, under ULDC revisions, number 6, the privately proposed revision 2024-290 beachfront properties waiver, the first reading and final adoption. We have an amendment to the reference to the Zoning Commission and LDRC recommendations where their vote was 5-1, not 4-2. Under the amendment to the actual language proposed, referenced and double underlined, we've added additional language to item E2 multifamily under A. Under the comprehensive plan amendments with concurrent ULDC and zoning applications, item number 8, ABN PDD CA 2023-832 Spring Haven. Or to replace Exhibit B, Standards for Analysis. We've included that in the attached backup material for the add delete. Deleting an amendment to Exhibit C1, Engineering Condition Number 3 is being stricken. For planning, number 8, we've added some additional language for clarification. We're proposing to delete condition number 9 and renumber number 10 to be number 9. For zoning applications, number 9, ABN PDD CA 2023-996 Cypress Creek PUD. We have an amendment to the official zoning map amendment rezoning Exhibit C1 to add engineering condition number 9. Under health, we are doing an amendment to their condition number 1 as shown in strikeout and underline. For environmental, we have condition 2 and 13 stricken. We're going to do modifications to Exhibit C2 for the Class A conditional use for the Type 2 excavation. We're adding an all petition condition number 2 for them to provide some updated documents at time of final DRO. Under the Health Department, for Exhibit C2, we've added condition 1, which has subparts A through L. Site design condition number 1 is also proposed for Exhibit C2, and use limitations 1 through 4 for Exhibit C2. On the addendum, under 9 as well, some additional modifications for Exhibit C1 for environmental, item condition number 2 as proposed with the underline, condition number 8 as proposed with the underline and strikeout. And I believe that is it.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, very good. If I could have a motion to adopt the agenda as modified by Vice Mayor, second by Commissioner Weiss. All those for, anybody opposed, see that it passes unanimously, 6-0. Very, very good. Okay. We are, and we have no, do we have any postponements, remands, withdrawals from the agenda?
No, no postponements.
Very good. So let's go on to the consent agenda as modified. Is there anyone here who wishes to, any commissioners wish to pull up anything from the consent agenda as modified at this time? Seeing no one, do I have a first to approve the consent?
Disclosures.
Disclosures on the consent agenda. That's exactly what I was going to say. So let's go forward on the first one on the consent agenda, and that would be for the Northwest Point. Does anybody have any? Mr. Mayor, Mr. Conchi, Mr. Moore.
You can just have each commissioner go through the list of all the consent, if that'd be preferable.
That would be good. We'll start with Commissioner Baxter. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. For the consent agenda, items number 1, 2, and 3, I do not have any disclosures, written, verbal, or site visits.
Very good. Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. For item 1, 2, and 3, I don't have any communications. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
No disclosures for consent.
Excellent. Commissioner Weiss.
No disclosures for consent.
And good morning.
Good morning.
Do
I have
you
no
any-
disclosures on
You have no
consent.
disclosures. And the mayor has no disclosures. So let the record reflect that we have we could have a motion. We already done it. I'll go ahead and replicate it. We have Vice Mayor has the motion, second by, as we did before, Commissioner Weiss. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously, 6-0. Now, I think we can just go ahead. Mr. Attorney, can we go ahead and just approve the consent agenda as modified? Unless no one needs to pull anything from the consent agenda. So I think we already did it, so we're going to move on to the regular agenda, which is found on page 5. So let's start with the ULDC revisions.
Yes, good morning. Item number 6 on the regular agenda is under our Unified Land Development revisions. We have a privately proposed revision, 2024-290 Beachfront Properties waiver. This is for the first and final adoption. This is a privately proposed revision by an applicant, so we will turn it over to them to present, and then staff.
Very good. Thank you. Morning, gentlemen.
I'm technologically challenged, and I'm here on part of the applicant. Oh, here we go. Am I up?
You.
He's pulling me up. For the record, Brian Seymour Gunster on behalf of the applicant. Here we go. So try to make this work. It vibrates when you push it, so it tells you you're doing it right. That's actually very helpful. We're here today on a simple
Always a pleasure,
request.
Mr. Chair.
Life is too stressful to not try to have a little fun.
Absolutely.
So we're here on a privately initiated request so that owners of beachfront property in a limited area of the town have an opportunity to come ask you for something. That's what we're here about. That's what the waiver is proposing. So it does have two elements to it. One is it allows for a limited waiver for a setback in the front and allows for a possibility for additional waivers on the side setbacks. And I'm going to get into a little bit of what that looks like and what that means in the language later. But this is really what we're talking about. But at its core, it's really saying, can we come ask you later? Without this, we can't even come ask for anything, which then puts a lot of folks in a bind because the properties that are there in this area of the county have been there for a very long time. They were built 40 to 50 years ago. Since that time, the coastal construction control line was moved, and George Gentile, who's the project planner, will show you that in a little bit. And that occurred in 1997. Obviously, we all know about what happened in Surfside and the importance of looking at those properties and potentially putting millions upon millions of dollars into keeping them from collapsing. And no one questions the need for that. It's the impact of that that creates some of the problems. In addition, you've got FEMA-based flood elevation changes. You've got changes to the building code. And now we have, based on a number of factors, new building options and ideas that creates resilient design and construction. So the Type 2 waiver is, again, just an option, and it's really about what could happen. So certainly we don't hide from the fact that this is specific, this came up specifically relative to a specific condo that would have an inability to meet the new standards under Surfside. That's a fact. It is not only about that, however, because just because you shore it up to a current standard, you're not making it a Cat 5 building. You're not making it so that it can withstand a hurricane that stalls over it. And if that happens to any of the buildings in this area, and they have over 50% of the damage, they all would have to start from scratch and try to meet the new code. And again, this waiver doesn't give them a right. It gives them a right to go talk to some folks. Obviously, everybody, I've been here for a long time. You don't go talk to your neighbors, you're not going to be standing in front of this commission very well. So it means go talk to everybody, go through this, and then try to present something to this commission for your ultimate determination on design. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to George. George will go through some of the details, starting with the changes in the CCCO. And then I'll come back to the language.
Good morning, Mr. Gentile. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, for the record, George Gentile, representing the project. What you have in front of you is a map that indicates where the coastal construction control lines has changed. As Brian indicated, most of the buildings in this area, actually all the buildings, were built under the 79 line, which means that as you go east of that line, you would have to build substantially differently based on state regulations, particularly at that time. So you saw everybody stayed behind that line. The red line that you see is the new line, which is the 1997 line. So all of these buildings in this area are eastward and have to meet all of the FDEP regulations and construction building permits and regulations of that area. This happens to be a close-up. The Beach Sound project is the one that's in the center there between the two identifying lines. It's interesting to note that this is a great test case because this is the narrowest lot in that entire area. It's still, the fact is, though, as Brian indicated, that if there is a major storm event and 50% of those buildings are damaged, they would be starting from scratch, and they would also, too, have to meet all of the new building code regulations that came in, particularly this past year, December 31st, as well as the FEMA new guidelines and the FEMA flood elevation information. This is a representation of what the development area, the standard development area with the 97 line, if this building or any of the buildings had to start over, the area in the purple on the top is that's the standard building area that's left. What happens is they would have to then go into, if you look below, the area between the two coastal construction setback lines, and we just did a test of about a 100-foot building in that area. And the two red lines that you see are the overlapping setbacks based on your code today. So in other words, they would not be able to build to close to any of the heights that the other buildings are in that area because their setbacks would be overlapping. There'd be nothing left to do on the property at all. We did have to, per your code, look at other local government comparisons. We looked at building heights, we looked at setbacks and those items, and those all became a part of the application that we submitted. The consistency element of this is that the ULDC revision does not violate any state, federal, or local laws. The analysis demonstrating consistency with the plan, there was an analysis provided. The finding of internal consistency with the ULDC was done. Your staff report indicates that. We identified those properties that may be affected in this area. There's 7 in the county. There are 7 buildings in this area that would be affected by. And again, as Brian indicated, this is not a right. This is a way to just come in and talk about how they may have to redevelop and to give them some relief if they had to based on the regulations. They still have to come back here for site plan approval. The commission would have full ability to deal with that waiver. The analysis examples we showed are similar land development regulations, and the staff recommendation, the revision, they indicated should be approved. In your staff report, you see that. And we are consistent based on letter provided by your planning department that we are consistent with the plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian to go ahead and finalize things.
So this is how the language will actually work. And we've been here, I think this is our 3rd time here, and I think we were before the Zoning Commission 3 times, once in their capacity as a review, twice as the Zoning Commission. But it starts with allowance in type 2 waivers. So as you can see, there are a lot of potential type 2 waivers. Again, these are all asks of the commission with some standards there, which we looked at in creating what we did. It's adding in the opportunity. You can see the limitation to the RH, RM zone beachfront properties and identifying to the standard you look to right here, which is in the middle of that paragraph. And it then goes on to here's what it is, and there's a whole lot in there. But I'm going to focus on one because it's the one that's been questioned by Mr. Bain in his letter relative to compatibility with surrounding uses. Now, when we were at the Zoning Commission, I can't remember, I think Lisa said it was 100 and something, over 100 times. The word compatible, she'll have it, I'm sure. She's smarter than me. Over 100 times the word compatible is used in the ULDC. And so we do think that's a viable standard. It allows us to look at what's around us and everybody saying, okay, what it is and how do things work, and then you would make a determination on whether that's the case. I did read Mr. Bain's letter that he sent late yesterday, where he again talked about all the litigation that would be occurring. You could certainly ask the county attorney, given the 100 and whatever number of times it shows up, how much litigation there's been over compatibility in the past. But I'm quite comfortable with compatibility as a standard. That said, as we always do, we looked and said, if we could define a specific standard, what would that ratio look like? And so we had our architects put together an idea. And again, the construction, just to go back to what was, will never work. Construction costs are way higher. Regulations are much different. You can't just take what was and put it back. And so we looked at some ideas, and we would be willing, and this is just something we looked at, we would be willing to identify language that says that any building above that 35 feet, any portion of that building above 35 feet, which is your baseline before you have to get into additional setbacks, would have to be set back 7.5 feet of height every additional foot of setback. Now, your code does not include the wedding cake type of setbacks where it goes like this. This is not something that's typically there. But you can't squeeze an entire building once you go over the height. So we said, okay, the 35 is there. So what can we do? What can we look at? And it does give a little bit more space between. It does give a little bit more light. And it does put a cap. Now, this is the narrowest property, so this is about as big as anyone could ever go. Some of the other buildings may be able to go higher, but if you wanted something more than compatibility, if you're really worried about that, this is a standard that could work, and we provided the language to the staff. But again, you've got limits on this. It's only about the setbacks. It's nothing else that's in the ULDC. It relates to building height and building height calculations, with a maximum reduction in the front, and again, either compatibility, or if you want to define standard, what I call the 1 to 7.5 ratio. And again, we provided that language, which was discussed with Mr. Stone as well. He didn't like what I first wrote, so we rewrote it. So where we're at today, after our third time, is that everybody so far, Zoning Commission, y'all previously, the staff, everybody's on board with this, just allowing for a few things relative to your code on setbacks and height, so we can try to give people an opportunity, if they want and need, to come back and ask you for a waiver. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. I don't know that I need any time for rebuttal, but if I do, I'll probably just stand up and the mayor will see me and either tell me yes or sit me down.
You can always see you, Mr. Seymour. Are there any questions for Mr. Seymour or Mr. Gentili at this time? Vice Mayor Marino, you're recognized.
I'm guessing we have cards?
We do.
Okay,
but
I'll
I'm
reserve
gonna-
my questions till after the cards.
Okay, very good. So, Mr. Seymour, at this point, we don't have any, but it could happen during the course of these discussions.
Understood. Thank you, Madam
That
Mayor.
will pull you up again. I know right where you're seated.
We'll be here.
I know you are. Okay. Would staff like to proceed at this time, please?
We do have a staff presentation. Jerome Audi for the office, principal planner, will come to the mic. And I would like to point out that that height limitation that was proposed by the applicant, we did include in the add delete. It's on page 2. And that will establish that the sites above, of the height above 35 feet will get 1 foot per 7.5 as they proposed. But Jerome can give an overview of our staff presentation.
Mr. Odie, you're recognized, sir.
Good morning. Jerome Ati with the Zoning Division, here to present on PPR 2024-290 beachfront property waivers. So here, this is a privately proposed revision to the Unified Land Development Code to allow a Type 2 waiver process to reduce the front setback by 5 feet and the side setbacks. So this would allow redevelopment of these multifamily structures, as you see on the slide there. So again, the proposed waiver will be an optional Type 2 waiver process, which will be approved by the Board of County Commissioners, and it allows a maximum 5-foot setback at the front and a deviation from the 1-to-1 over 35 feet. And we, as you can see in the add delete, and as mentioned by the applicant, we have had staff discussions along with county attorney and the applicant. After the zoning commission hearing, there were some discussions about the height, and from those discussions, we have added to provide a 1 foot of setback for each 7.5 feet above the 35-foot maximum building height, and this will only apply to the portion over the 35 feet. So staff is in support of the concept and all the other comprehensive plan, ULDC, federal, local, state, and every other regulation will have to be complied with this type 2 waiver process. It does not allow a deviation from those. So here on this slide, you'll see the 7 properties that this waiver will be confined to. We have added restrictions or criteria as it relates to the building height. The existing waiver will only apply to those 7 parcels here because those 7 parcels currently have structures that are greater than 35 feet in height and more than 3 stories. So here's a side-by-side view of the 7 properties, again with the stories in comparison with the subject site, which is the 4-story there, which is the smallest site. And here again, we have a side-by-side of the subject site in the middle and the 2 on each side. So at the Zoning Commission on July 2nd, we had the Zoning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 5-1. And acting as the LDRC, they recommended that the proposed changes are consistent with the comprehensive plan, also by a vote of 5-1. And here, this is the approval hearing, which is first reading and approval, and the staff motion is to adopt an ordinance approving the proposed ULDC revisions. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Ota, this time? Very good. Thank you, sir. Staff, do you have anything else at this point? None. We do have some cards, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Weiss to, how many cards do we have?
3.
3 cards, that's not bad. All right, go right ahead. As you hear your name, you know what to do.
Are you ready, Vice Mayor?
I am.
Okay. All right. Ed O'Sullivan, followed by Gerard Collins and Seth Ben.
Thanks. I was just hoping to follow up the tail end after all the experts. My name is Ed O'Sullivan, and I live in the Claridge, and I'm also on their board.
Very good. Good morning, sir.
Part of the real problem with this is we just found out about it 2 weeks ago when a reporter called us. All this work that's been done on this particular waiver has been done for months, and nobody ever thought, gee, let's call the people in the 7 buildings and tell them what's going on so they can participate. So what happened when that occurred was the 200 and some people that we're talking about, condo owners, this became very, very stressful. The condos, by this proposal to switch from the familiar codes that they've been used to for, as they say, 40, 50 years, to new guidelines that are unknown. That creates fear, and fear creates a real stress. That's why all 6 of the condos, other than Beach Sound, have sent letters that we've given to the Vice Mayor that disapprove of this approach. We have worked with Mr. Perko and his team, first with the Fontainebleau and now with Coulter, for over 3 years to try and find something that will work with the community, because it isn't just the height. What happens with this process is it takes away our sunshine from our building. It creates more mass, which is more stress and more load, and that's why these people are concerned, and they want to be part of the process rather than to be fighting after something is presented. In the end, on that subject, it's just way too big a building, even with what the staff just said, way too big a building for that little tiny lot. As far as the milestone issue, which I think is very important, again, to the Vice Mayor, all 6 buildings are or will meet the milestone, and they're spending from $1 million to $3 million to do that. That's they love their buildings, and they're going to stay. The only one that hasn't, but has all the money to do it, there's no hardship, is Little Beach Sound. They received $2.5 million forfeit from the escrow when Mountain Blue withdrew from the project. When we worked with the Beach Sound people a while ago, it looked like their range to make their milestone goal was going to be between $800,000 and $1.2 million. That left them $1 million in the bank to spruce that building up and make it really compatible. We've had another building on the island that's done that. Just mentioned that little 4-unit building, Lily's Landing. They let it go down a bit, just like Beach Sound. They didn't maintain it. A couple years ago, they came in, did a complete refresh on the outside. Units in that building were selling on an average of less than $1 million. Now they're selling on an average for $3 million, and if it's in with the community, no harm, no foul. When the applicant talks, it states demolition of existing structures, redevelopment of the coastal sites. That's what they say. That's the only way to do it, is to destroy it.
Would you like to finish up, sir?
That's quick. Was that 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
That was 3, sir.
Wow. Okay. Beach Sound can be restored and made so those units will sell for $3 million. They have the money in the bank to do it, and what that does is fits for everybody in the community. And you don't have to tear it down. I've had very good luck since I moved to this committee 15 years ago restoring things, and they usually work well for the neighbors and the customers and all the people around them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Gerard Collins.
Good morning, sir. You're recognized.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Gerard Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S. I'm an attorney at the law firm K. Bender Rembaum, and I represent the Carlisle Jupiter Island condominium. I'm here today with Ms. Sue Farrell, who is the property manager for the Carlisle. And we are here to join with the Claridge and to voice our opposition to the proposal. The Board of Directors of the Carlisle has asked me to appear before you this morning to voice their opposition to the proposed plan of development. The Board has asked me to read a statement concerning their position. The Board considers the redevelopment proposal to be a self-serving move by a developer to increase density with no regard to the negative impacts on the environment, the ambience, and the beauty of the island and the surrounding areas. Any representation by Pergo Development that they have the support of the neighboring owners would be patently false with regard to the residents of the Carlisle. Should the proposal survive past this early exploratory stage, we will join with our neighbors in vigorous opposition. So I'm here to put the positions of the Carlisle on record that they vehemently oppose the proposed plan of redevelopment. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Weiss?
Seth Ben.
Good morning, sir. You're recognized.
Good morning,
I'll make
Mayor.
sure.
Good morning,
Has everybody
Commissioners.
received, you submitted a letter to everybody here?
I did.
Very
I
good.
did.
Okay, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Seth Bain with Lewis, Lohman, and Walker, certified in city, county, local government, and a certified planner. I'm here today on behalf of the Claridge, and Mayor, if I may, I'd like to request a few additional minutes to make my presentation. We stand in the same position as the applicants today. We're one of the people that you're considering changing the zoning code for, so I'm going to ask for just a little additional leeway time-wise, if you'll be so kind of great. But not a lot of cards. I know you got a lot of cards out here for other projects, but
Let me ask the members of the board. Would that be an additional minute or two, Mr.
yeah,
Bain?
zoning commission gave me 5. I'd like to at least take a breath, so it might be slightly longer than that, but it won't.
Five may be appropriate, especially since we all received your card, your letter, your correspondence.
Yeah, understood.
So let me ask the members of the board, is there anybody who would oppose an additional 2 minutes for Mr. Bain? Okay, very good. And I can see that we have reset the clock. So, sir, you are on.
Perfect.
Go right
Thank
ahead.
you so much. The sky is the limit. You need to ask yourselves today, what is the appropriateness of making this zoning code change that while it looks like it's for 7 buildings, you've heard it from the applicant today, and it's been made clear that this application is for 1 building and 1 building only. You've also heard it said today that part of the reason they need it is because they're the smallest lot, only re-emphasizing the fact that This project is for one building and one building only. This is not a legislative determination. This should be a quasi-judicial determination subject to competent substantial evidence. When we look at what's going on here, we look at the range of what this impact is to. It's to 7 buildings. And as you heard, there was no effort made out to reach out to us. Why this is especially galling is that this is the 3rd time this building has attempted to redesign itself and to find a way to move forward under your existing code. First, they looked at the variance process, and they realized there was no hardship here. We're not going to be able to get a variance. There's no hardship. We have an existing building. We could build something under the code. Then they proposed an overlay. Let's get all the buildings together. Let's talk about ways to improve the entire community. Let's talk about resiliency. Let's talk about ways a project could come in and improve the site through an overlay that all 7 properties are involved in. And that fell by the wayside. So then they've decided to come in and work with staff and make an effort, despite the fact that they knew, like as Ed Sullivan said, they've been talking to these gentlemen for years, talking about what they want to do, what might be appropriate, et cetera. And instead, all of a sudden, we get this code change in front of us, and there's been no discussion. There's no defensible limitation created. Now, we've heard that they're saying it's because of the CCCL line relocation, it's because of flood changes, it's because of the building code modifications. But in no instance have they told us what those impacts look like, what that change is. They could come in today, and I got to say, I feel a little bit hurt by the fact that Brian came in today and has some new proposal about some additional slight setbacks starting at 35 feet. Quite frankly, if that's his proposal, we'd like to take the time to look at it. I would say it's inappropriate to approve that today because my client's not had a chance to consider what that looks like. We saw one, outline sketch of that. And that's exactly what we've been looking and asking for, is that why are we operating in a vacuum here? They're spending all this money on the project. They clearly know what they want to build. They have a concept in mind. Let's be having a forthright conversation about what that looks like. It sounds like we've got the start of that today. I welcome that. It's exactly what I asked for at the Zoning Commission and what I continue to ask for today. Is there a defensible change to the code? We want to know that. Is there additional setbacks? Sure. Now, what he's said sounds like we looked at George's presentation of how your code operates today. The code operates that you can go 35 feet, and if you want to go higher, you're going to start stepping it back. And why is that? It's because it's the main tool for compatibility you have. So yes, while they can come up and say, well, the consistency, the requirements that we put in place are compatibility, yes, but you've just eliminated the single best tool that the county has and has always defended to ensure compatibility. And again, as we saw, the reason why is because they're the narrowest lot. They have less than 1 acre on the ocean side of A1A there. They're trying to build a project there. And they want to go, slightly, if they wanted to go slightly higher, if they wanted to propose a building that still fit in the compatibility that we talked about, the ratios for setback to height, building mass to the size of the lot. Let's look at those things. Let's have a forthright discussion about it instead of operating in this vacuum. We've seen the start of that today. We'd love the opportunity to see those standards in place. We'd like the chance to review those with staff, see what the actual outcomes or impacts are, because otherwise there's no clear standard for it. So it was pointed out, we don't want to end up in a spot where we're in litigation. The fact whether there has or hasn't been in the past doesn't change the fact that it's an option, and that's not what we want to engage in. We want to engage in defensible standards. It seems like we're on a path towards that today. Let's have a chance to look at those. Let's have it come back and say, okay, what are the impacts to this property? How does that look like? How does it compare to the other sites on this strip? We'd love that opportunity so that we can put clear, defensible, measurable standards in place. And then when they come in with the building, we don't even have to show up because we know that it meets the code standards you've put in place instead of some vague standard. So with that said, happy to address any questions. We'd like there to be defensible standards. We'd like time to review what was proposed today and come back to you so that we can have the time to understand that. Otherwise, the sky's the limit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do they have any questions?
Yes.
No. Okay, I'll have Commissioner Baxter. Sir, you might want to just stay up here for a minute. Mr. Bain?
Yes.
Go right ahead. Commissioner
I
Baxter, you're
apologize, Mayor. I
recognized.
should have been more clear. My questions are for staff.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks anyways.
I'll give him a shot.
You've already gotten 5 minutes. Don't push it. Okay, go right ahead, Commissioner Baxter.
Does our code currently include step backs over 35 feet?
Yes. 1 foot per 1 foot 6-foot additional setback for 1 additional foot in height. Over 35 feet.
Over 35. Thank you. Also, somebody had brought up, if a hurricane came by and knocked down all the buildings, surrounding buildings, God forbid, would any of them currently be in compliance with our current code?
No. We do have a slide, I think it's 56, slide 56. Go way to the end. All of the 7 buildings are built with smaller setbacks than are currently required. So all of them, if they were to be knocked down, they would require variances to get to the current height. There we go. There's the slide that shows it has the heights of all the 7 buildings and the side setbacks on each one. The side 1 shortfall and the side 2 shortfall show how there's a shortfall of setback for all those existing buildings except for Beach Sound.
So, except for that, everyone would either have to do variance or this waiver that's being proposed today?
Correct.
One more card. Oh, of course.
So any applicants, if we approve this waiver, basically just come to us and we get to review the compatibility of the surrounding neighboring buildings, is what this does.
Correct. If the waiver is approved, they would come to this board and have to demonstrate that they're compatible and consistent with the code and their proposal, as opposed to, right now, any of them could go to the zoning commission and ask for a variance. But this would be a waiver at this board rather than a variance at the zoning commission.
And I will say I do like the idea of not everything fits in a box. Not everything is going to, we're not going to know what's going to come across. I think you guys see that even more than us. A lot of things don't necessarily do exactly what we think they're going to do. So I like the idea of keeping this open. I like the idea that it will come before this board and we get to decide if it's compatible or not. So I do thank you guys for doing all the homework, putting this together for us. I just appreciate it. And I'll wait to see if anyone else has comments before we make any motion.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Baxter. My question is, there's a requirement that we give notice to everybody who is going to be affected by these changes or not?
With the Unified Land Development Code change, the requirement is for posting in the newspaper. There was a Beach Sound Association meeting that staff was in attendance in case questions came up on this on April 1st of this year. And no questions, Wendy attended and no questions came up. But there is no specific ULDC notification requirement, but we were under the understanding from the applicant and reached out to the various condos quite a bit ago. I think George could speak to that, what he's done.
Very good. I'll wait till he gets up here. Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more card, and Commissioner Weiss?
Michelle Sylvester.
Ms. Sylvester, you're recognized.
Thank you so much for taking the time to allow me to come and speak to you. I am a resident of Beach Sound, and I am also a local insurance agent. I've been in the area for over 35 years, and I've seen it just grow and blossom. And I think that the builder, Mr. Perko, is an excellent builder, and as an insurance agent, what he's putting in place that would take over the current small condo, what he's putting in place is an improvement, but in all levels, eco-friendly as well as safety. It's denying an improvement like that is like stepping on our toes. And I just wanted to come and voice my opinion that I think this is a great opportunity for Jupiter and for the environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we have no more cards, Commissioner Weiss, so you have an opportunity, Mr. Seymour, for rebuttal.
I will be as brief as I can. Just a couple of points that were made. So Mr. Bain says, oh, now we're moving towards this direction, but we actually heard from Mr. O'Sullivan what they actually want, right? This was the concern all along. Beach Sound can be restored so the units can sell for $3 million, put the money in, keep it the way it is. And that's what he said was compatible. That's not the only thing that is compatible. Setbacks are not the only thing related to compatibility, right? He even admitted that it needs more to be compatible. So there is more to it, but the concern about just keep pushing this down the line means no one can do anything. No one can come and ask. And to Commissioner Baxter's question, that's really where we're at today. There was also discussion by Mr. Bain about they came for a variance. We never came for a variance, although the Claridge does have a variance. In 2000, I think it was 12 or 15, they received a variance to keep the existing setback that they had. And so we didn't say, oh, there's no hardship. I don't know whose brain he was reading, but that wasn't there. We worked with staff through this process. That's how we got to where we are today. So that's really what happened. But the truth is, we do know what it looks like with the change because you saw it today. Overlapping setbacks, as Mr. Gentile said. You just heard about the insurance, right? That's because these buildings are much better built. That means they're also much more expensive. You heard this is for one. Mr. Bain said this is really just for one. That is incorrect. Yes, we looked at it on the narrowest site, which is what we're looking at to see what could actually make it viable for that, which means it's viable for everybody else. But as a matter of fact, this applies to everybody there, not just one unit owner. And again, if a Cat 5 hurricane comes in next week or next month, as it very well could, and knocks every one of these things down, everybody's gonna have to come in and ask for something. All we're saying is please give us a chance to ask. One more thing, Mr. Collins referenced an increase in density, that they're objecting to an increase in density. I forgot to mention that and I apologize. You are under this waiver in the language, you may not ask for more density. So there will not be one more unit. Yes, they will potentially be bigger. Yes, they will be nicer. And yes, they'll be worth more. That's how you make things like this work. So we'd like the opportunity to come present it. Again, we believe that compatibility is the right standard. It's a fair standard. It's in your code. If not, we know that the 7.5 to 1 can work, and we will accept that as well to have that definitive standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Any questions for Mr. Seymour at this time? Otherwise, I will recognize Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you. When you look at the other units that are there, and you look at the building heights, we have an idea of what is compatible. When you look at, if you go further south on the island, you will see one building that stands out, does not fit. However, that building is not in unincorporated Palm Beach County. That building is in Tequesta. And Tequesta was the one who said, yes, you can build this building. I am comfortable with staff's assessment of compatible, but at the end of the day, we as a board of 7 are the ones that vote on that, and if it's not compatible, it's not getting voted in. So I'm comfortable with the language as the district commissioner, and I know that I've upset a lot of people who live in those 7 buildings. I apologize. I believe this is a fair assessment of what can be done, but at the end of the day, the board, this board, actually, I don't know if it'll be this board or another makeup of this board, will be the ones that will be saying yes and no. And I do not foresee anything that is going to be non-compatible to what is already there. And God forbid we should have a hurricane. Lord, I don't want to hear those words in this chamber. But if something happened and all those buildings were destroyed, they'd be asking for the same thing. Thank you, Brian, for clarifying. I had written density down here. Thank you for clarifying. I was also under the belief that the density was not changing. But with that, I am comfortable with this because at the end of the day, it has to keep coming back to the board. We are the ones that are going to be saying yes and no. And it will be an option for all of those other buildings if they need it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Woodward, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just from staff, for clarification, what we're voting on today is whether or not to create a waiver process for these 7 properties. Is that right? We're not specific on any of these properties. It's creating a waiver.
Correct.
Okay. So if this passes, then what would the process be for someone to come in and use this waiver?
They would have to apply for a public hearing application, and that would come before this board to request approval of the waiver to use this alternate standard of height rather than the other.
Is this at a time when they would be contacting their neighbors?
Yes, absolutely. They would be required to notify everyone within 500 feet, and the site would be posted, and also the newspaper advertisement.
Okay, and last question, what are we allowed to judge under compatibility?
What are you allowed to judge when you're making a decision on whether or not to find a project compatible?
Yes.
It's really, compatibility comes down to an analysis of the subject site and the proposal and the surrounding or adjacent land uses. In this particular instance, a lot of times compatibility comes in with use. For example, if it's a residential area and a commercial plaza comes in, you're looking at comparing residential uses to commercial uses. In this particular instance, you're looking at a corridor where all of these properties are multifamily. So this is not a multifamily to multifamily kind of, it's not changing the overall use. It looks scale, mass, and character. So for staff, when we would make a recommendation on compatibility, we would be looking at this site to the adjacent sites and use, same multifamily, it's the same, so it's going to be compatible as far as the use goes. But scale, mass, and character, we would look at the adjacent parcels in the overall corridor. And in this particular instance, one property is 9 stories and the other property is 8 stories next door. So we would take that into account on our recommendation with regards to any changes to this site and whether or not we think it would be compatible. So, I mean, it comes down to the board and staff, scale, mass, and character.
So anything that comes after this vote, if this passes, all of the neighbors are informed, have a chance to be involved. That's when we're discussing height, site plan, all of that. But that's not what this is today.
Correct. We would bring before you the proposal that they have, their building design and those features, the architecture and all of that, and the board and staff would look at that. Staff would make a recommendation. Do we think that proposal is compatible or not? And a lot of times before we get to these hearings, we work a lot with the applicant on compatibility. We increase buffers. We have wall changes, for your typical commercial next to residential change. So yes, we would be working with the applicant on what we would recommend would be compatible, and then that would ultimately be presented to you at one of these hearings and to make the final call.
I'd like to add on to that compatibility isn't the only standard that we have proposed. So there are existing waiver criteria that the applicant has to comply with, which is not creating additional conflicts with other ULDC requirements, that it isn't a detrimental effect on the overall design, that there other alternative design options have been looked at. And in addition to those 3 that exist in the code, for somebody who's seeking a waiver in the RH zone, a property on the beachfront, they have to demonstrate that there's consistency with the comprehensive plan, consistency with the code in the other sections. So Article 14, environmental requirements, our flood damage requirements, and so forth. Compatibility is the one that we were just talking about, and that they've demonstrated some changed circumstances on why that waiver is necessary. So the staff report analyzes, it'll be those 7 criteria that we would have to support all 7 of them.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, Vice Mayor Marino, you're recognized.
At this time, I will go ahead and make a motion.
Hold on just one second before you do. I know I'm going to recognize you to make that motion. Are there any other questions or comments for the staff? All right, we're ready to proceed then to the vote. And Vice Mayor, you're recognized.
So Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt an ordinance approving item 6.
Very good. And is there a second by Commissioner Woodward?
I just want clarity whether that's including the proposed additional setback waiver that staff read. I just want to be clear on that point.
Let's just say
Includes
yes.
that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously 6-0. Very good. Going right on to the next page. Thank you, applicants and all those who spoke here today. We're moving on now to 6C7. Spring Heaven MUPD, and staff?
Yes, so under C, comprehensive plan amendments with concurrent ULDC, items 7 and 8 are kind of a package. But first we will go to number 7, LGA 2024-005, Spring Haven MUPD, and we can turn it over to the applicant. I'm guessing they will present on both 7 and 8.
right?
Let the record reflect that 7 and 8, and I'm looking at my attorneys, 7 and 8 are going to be taken together. We will discuss them together, and we will vote on them as one. Is that correct?
You'll be voting for them separately. Number 7 is a comp plan amendment, and number 8 is a zoning application. And for number 8, you'll have to do ex parte disclosures.
Okay, so we may discuss them together, but we're going to take them separately. Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to find out, do we have cards on this item? Okay.
The answer is no.
If we don't have any cards on this item, I don't know if any of the commissioners wants to get a presentation.
Does anybody here would like a presentation? Seeing none?
Madam Mayor.
Then go right ahead and,
Madam Mayor, before we do that, let's do disclosures, and then I can make a motion.
very good. All right, Commissioner Weiss, your light is off. So let's go ahead and make disclosures. And I'm going to start this time from Commissioner Woodward. Go right ahead.
I have no disclosures.
Commissioner Weiss?
I had verbal communications with Josh Nichols.
Very good. Vice Mayor?
No disclosures.
Commissioner Bernard?
No disclosures, Madam Mayor.
And Commissioner Baxter?
No disclosures, Mayor.
And the mayor has no disclosures. All right, so who wants to go ahead and start this then? Commissioner Weiss, go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. As this is in District 2, I appreciate the opportunity to make the motion to approve item, this is going to be 7.
7, right here.
Yep. And that's a future land use application.
Very good. And we have a second by Commissioner Woodward. All those for, anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously, 6-0. Nice job. Come again, anytime.
For this presentation.
Yeah, right, that's very good.
I'll take it.
Okay. Commissioner Weiss, you're recognized.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to approve item number 8, and that would include, that is the accompanying zoning application.
Before you do, I just want to be sure, does anybody have any questions or comments or wish any to have a presentation on number 8 before we commence with the vote? I see the attorney is, go right ahead, sir.
I'm maybe predicting something here. I just wanted to make sure that it was separated into 8A, B, and C.
I was just going to say 8A, B, and C.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Very good. Seeing no questions or comments, Commissioner Weiss has moved, and that includes on 8A, B, and C. I have a second from Commissioner Woodward. All those for. Anybody opposed? See that it passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you
so
again.
much. Really appreciate it.
Very good.
Item 9.
Now, we're going to go on to 9, and that is on D9. We will be doing disclosures. And, Mr. Attorney, should we start with the disclosures first?
I think that'd be a good
I'll
idea.
start with Commissioner Baxter then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've received numerous, for item number 9, we have received numerous emails which have been filed with the clerk. We have had verbal communications with Nancy Willie, Tom Winkles, Sylvia Winkles, Bob Smar, Ben Bailey, Lindsay Parsons, Scott Backman, Jeff Brophy, Julie Nichols, Dr. Don Newbaum, and Mike Klein. There's been no site visit. And if you would please, if I missed any names that they say, please add them.
Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. For item 9, verbal communications with Cynthia DePonte, Maggie Martin, Jeff Brophy, Lindsay Libes, Andrew Maxey, Peter Feeman, Nancy Weil, Lindsay Parsons, Scott Bachman, Tom Winkles, Sylvia Winkles, and Mikkel Klein. And I've received correspondence and no site visits. And if there's anyone that I've missed, I'd like to incorporate some of the other comments. Thank you.
Is that okay? Mr. Attorney, is that okay?
Well, it all has to be individualized. So if any commissioners hear names, you can always come back and
modify and amend. Very good. Okay, so the record is going to reflect that. Vice Mayor Marino.
Thank you, Mayor. I gave to the clerk a huge package of letters and a flash drive with all those letters and correspondence. And I have had verbal communications with Lindsay Parsons, Jeff Brophy, Scott Bachman, Nancy Willey, Sylvia Winkles, Tom Winkles, Bob Smar, Ben Bailey, Mikkel Klein, Julie Nicholas, and Don Newbaum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. On verbal communications, I spoke with Jeff Brophy, Lindy Parsons, Scott Bachman, Aaron Halliburton, Peter Feeman, Sylvia Winkles, Tom Winkles, Nancy Willey, Robert Smar, Benjamin Bailey, Andre Fladell, Michael Klein, Julie Nicholas, and Don Newbaum received a number of letters and emails, and those have been filed with the clerk.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. I had verbal communication with Scott Bachman, Lindsay Parsons, Jeff Brophy, Michael Klein, Don Newbaum, Peter Feeman, Gordon Dieterle, and my staff had verbal communication with Sylvia Winkles and Nancy Wild. We also received numerous correspondence, emails, and letters that have been filed. No site visit.
Thank you very much. And the mayor's office has had verbal communications with Scott Bachman, of course, the Mescal Group, Lindsay Parsons, Toll Brothers, Jeff Brophy, WGI, Nancy Willey, Sylvia Winkle, Thomas Winkle, Benjamin Bailey, Diane Bushman, and all of our emails and collateral matters materials have been filed with the clerk. So I think we have completed that.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Baxter, yes.
May I add Peter Feynman to mine as well, please?
Very good. Very good. Anybody, any other amendments? If not, we are going to go ahead and proceed. Sir, you're recognized.
Good morning. For the record, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, Jeff Brophy with WGI. Here with me today is our entire consultant team as well as the developer Toll Brothers. So we have our land use attorney, Scott Bachman, our environmental attorney, civil engineer, traffic engineer, who I will bring up to answer any of the difficult questions that you may have after the presentation.
Very good.
Thank you for having us here today. Before you is the Cypress Creek PUD. And just for some context, the property that, that is before you is outlined in the red, shaded there, and it is approximately 122 acres of an abandoned golf course that was approved many decades ago. I'll get into the history here in a little bit. But the subject of the application before you today is that area outlined in the red. The land use of the property is LR2. Everything surrounding us is pretty much LR2. You can see a couple other higher density to the west of HR12 and MR5, but for the most part, the subject property is the LR2 land use. It allows for, with just the land use density, 244 units. Before you today is an application for 152 single-family units. What's interesting about the property is, though, although it has the LR2 land use, it does have an inconsistent zoning. As of today, it has the old AR zoning, which doesn't exist in the code now. So whatever goes there to be consistent with the existing land use of LR2, a rezoning has to occur. So what is surrounding us, for example, is RS. The RS designation is consistent with the LR2 land use. It allows for 6,000 square foot lots. However, what we are proposing is a PUD, and the reason for that is because of the size of the property that is being requested to be rezoned. So we are going to the PUD designation, and because it is a PUD, it allows for us to apply many conditions of approval and allows us to have much more flexibility in regards to the types of units that are being proposed. What we do not want to have is something that meets the minimum standards of RS. We want to go well above and beyond that. So what you'll see is us proposing average lot sizes of over 14,000 square feet, or about a third of an acre. What we are requesting is single-family residential. This will be 152 single-family homes. Adjacent to us, all surrounding us, for the most part, is also single-family residential homes. Again, just to our west is some multifamily homes as well. Before you today are 3 requests. The first is that rezoning from the AR to the PUD. The second is the development order abandonment of the golf course, which goes all the way back to the 1970s. The golf course in and of itself has been abandoned for approximately about 7-8 years. The Class A conditional use to allow for a Type 2 excavation. I'll get into the details of the drainage a little later on in my presentation, but because of the extensive lakes on the property, we will be going above and beyond the code in the code. If you go above the 10% allowance for excavated material to be taken off site, which were approximately 12%, you have to apply for conditional use. So we have applied for that and included that with this application. Staff assessment, as Wendy was just talking about, there are several standards in order to meet the PUD requirements for actually any rezoning. I will not reiterate them. They are in your staff report. We meet those requirements. Staff is in agreement with that assessment. So the staff report is part of the record in the fact that we meet the standards of the ULDC for the rezoning. Staff recommends approval of the requests. We went to Zoning Commission a couple weeks ago. Zoning Commission was also recommending approval of the requests before you. Because this is within COBRA's boundaries, we did go to COBRA Growth Management, ultimately for the final vote of their delegates. They did recommend approval of the Toll Brothers PUD project based on the density proposal and compatibility with the existing properties, and request that the Zoning Commission as well as the BCC adopt the staff report for approval. In addition to that, we have had extensive meetings with the community, and as you can see today that there's folks here both in opposition as well as support. I would love to say everyone is in support of this application, but that's not the case, although we strive very hard to make that happen. There has been extensive meetings over the last year since this application has been filed with everybody to continue to work with the community and find resolution to the concerns of the community. Just to give you a little history, these are 2 separate approvals. And I just want to make that clear, that the golf course was approved on its own. Originally in 1963 under a building permit, the golf course was built. And then afterwards, about in the 70s, there was a special exception, which is what is being abandoned today, for the golf course. Separately from that, the surrounding Cypress Creek community had a separate resolution and zoning approval for that community on June 23rd, 1977. So they are completely separate approvals. There's no linkage or development limitations between the 2 properties. Back in 2018, when this was applied for with a different application and a different developer, a letter was requested from staff. At the time, the zoning director issued a letter of determination, and it determined that the golf course was approved as a separate entity and is currently not part of a plan unit development, so it is not a part of the same zoning that is surrounding us in the existing Cypress Creek community. Just to give you a little bit further history, again, going back to 2018, we had the determination letter from Palm Beach County. Since the application that was previously applied for, once that was through, there was a legal opinion that was issued, finally, I think back in 2022, and that legal opinion ruled that Cypress Creek Golf Course and the Cypress Creek neighborhood are separate entities, and development between the 2 is not connected or limited in any way. So what we are, again, requesting for today is the rezoning of only the 122 acres and the allowance under the LR2 land use, which we meet based on the 152 units we are requesting. This is the proposed site plan. As I mentioned, Toll Brothers will be the developer. Access will be off Military Trail. It will be an entirely self-contained community and secure community. It will have all its own open space, drainage, recreation areas, all of which I'll get into in detail as we go through further slides. But as you can see, it is 152 single-family units. We have the LR2 land use designation, but we actually sit at a lower density of 1.24 dwelling units per acre. Just like the surrounding Cypress Creek community, we are a mix of 1- and 2-story homes. And again, everything will be self-contained within the 122 acres. Just to go into the lot sizes a little bit in regards to compatibility with the single family homes surrounding us, we do have an average lot size of just over 14,000 square feet, or approximately 1/3 of an acre. We are not requesting zero lot line homes. That is the major difference between what was submitted previously and what is within this request. This is compatible use adjacent to compatible use, compatible lot size adjacent to compatible lot size. The existing Cypress Creek neighborhood that surrounds us has a density of approximately 3.02 units per acre. Again, what's before you today is a community of approximately 1.24 dwelling units per acre. And again, when we look at the average lot size of the Cypress Creek community that surrounds us, they're approximately 14,900 square feet. What we are coming in with is just over 14,000 square feet, so it's very much compatible with what is currently constructed surrounding us. The major difference being, in addition to compatible lot sizes, there is extensive open space and drainage and lake areas you can see here within the proposal today. As I mentioned, access will be off Military Trail. This is an existing full access. This was the former access of the golf course at the time. So there, it does have directional entry and exit both north and southbound on Military Trail. And there is an existing turn lane along Military Trail traveling southbound into the site. That is a substandard turn lane. We have a condition of approval which requires us to improve that to the greatest extent possible to meet today's standards. So we will be making improvements to the turn lane on Military Trail. Just in regards to the buffering and the compatibility, we do have approximately 8 acres of perimeter buffering surrounding us, approximately 34 acres of lake area, and about 37 acres of open space scattered throughout the site. We do have enhanced buffers surrounding us, especially where we have homes that are adjacent to existing homes. Your ULDC requires 8-foot compatibility buffers. We have 20-foot buffers surrounding all those areas. And in addition to that, instead of the compatibility requirements for landscape, we actually have the incompatibility requirements for landscape between, even though these are compatible home sites. We do have 2 neighborhood parks within the development. We also have our own main recreation pod, which will have its own clubhouse. It will have its pool, everything that comes with an upscale Toll Brothers development. We also, and it is important to note that the recreation pod was relocated. Originally, it was located more central to the development. As we've gone through the approval process, we have moved that recreation area based on comments from the community. So we have tweaked the plan based on comments in order to accommodate concerns from the neighbors. We also have a 2.5-acre civic pod, which is a requirement of the PUD. When you rezone, 2% of your land area has to be dedicated for a civic site. The county staff has asked for us to include that on the plan. So on the current master plan, we do have that 2.5-acre site out on Military Trail. And we also have an existing open space just north of that, and I'll talk about a condition of approval in regards to the improvements of that open space as I get to the end of the presentation. In addition to that, I mean, we've been on this thing for almost a year in regards to working with staff. We've worked with in identifying over 5 acres of tree preservation area on site. We understand it's an existing course. There's some beautiful trees out there. We've worked with them hard to preserve as much of that area as we possibly can, and you can see those highlighted in the yellow here. And drainage, I know there's been comments and concerns in regards to drainage. We do have, you can see outlined in the blue, that is the lake system that is proposed. I'll show you the existing here in just a moment. But although what you're not approving here today is drainage, right? We're not bringing that before you, but we do have an extensive list of permitting that is required and has to happen afterwards, just like any other project. And this is the laundry list of different agencies that are going to review and have to approve the drainage before we put a shovel in the ground. And what's a little different in unincorporated county is although preliminary drainage isn't something that is submitted with your rezoning application, we have gone above and beyond and started that process because we know it's a concern and we want to make sure that we are addressing the concerns of the neighbors in regards to drainage, how it's draining, the amount of drainage. So we have designed this up front to accommodate all of those concerns. And when we look at the area, this is the drainage basin outlined in red here. So we do accommodate drainage from the existing and adjacent community. Not all of the community, but a good chunk of it. So the majority of the community does drain onto the golf course here, as well as portions of Military Trail. We have extensive conditions of approval in the staff report that require us to take that historical drainage and have it a part of our development approval, as well as all of our permitting. It has to include all of that historical drainage. We're not getting past any agency if we don't include that. So we will continue to take that historical drainage, and I'll show you kind of some of that flow in just a second. These are the existing lakes on site. So currently you can see the L23 canal going through the center of the property. There's approximately 14.24 acres of existing lake on the golf course that accommodates all of the surrounding community as well as the golf course. What is being proposed is almost 34 acres of lake throughout the entire community, upgraded to obviously today's standards, and that is going to accommodate not only the historical drainage but also the drainage for the proposed development. And you can see the existing pipes in blue here on the map. A lot of those pipes, not all of those pipes flow directly onto the golf course. Some of those go directly into the L23 canal. Some of them go north to the Stanley Weaver Canal. So not all of the properties within Cypress Creek drain onto the golf course, but those that do, we do have to accommodate. And I'm just going to show you a very quick example. Along the north is our homes that are adjacent to us along Palo Verde. And currently, those homes drain onto the golf course property. We have to continue to take on that drainage. And we're going to do that, as you can see, through a series of pipes and swales within the buffers in the backs of the yards that go within open space areas into our pipe systems, so into inlets, into our pipe systems, through additional, through our pipe system, ultimately into our lake, ultimately outfalling into the L23 canal. So you can see from north to south, we have to accommodate that drainage. We have designed to accommodate that drainage. We're not pushing anything back onto the existing Cypress Creek community. Everything that's coming onto our site is being taken onto our site, into our pipe system, and outfalling into the canal.
Let me just stop right there. I have a question. Go back to that slide before we... Drainage is an issue. And yes, it always is. And having a golf course right there was a perfect spot for drainage. This slide, the red, and that's why I'd like to interrupt you right now because I don't see any numbers there to pull it back up. But let's talk about this for a minute. Those arrows, are they pipes or are they swales?
They are pipes.
Pipes. Now, it appears to me, and I'm not an engineer, but it appears to me that these pipes, will they be going alongside the new units or under the ground, or how will they go from outside that area through the housing units and into the into the drainage?
Yeah, so they go beside the units. So what happens is, and you'll see this on any community, not just this proposal, but any community has to drain the site into the lakes and then into the outfall. In order to do that, you have to have drainage easements in between lots. Not every lot, but the majority, throughout the development, you'll see drainage easements, ranging anywhere between 15 and 20 feet that will have a pipe in it that will drain from the rear of the lot, usually into a roadway system and then into the lake.
So these pipes are under the ground?
Yes, ma'am.
And who maintains these pipes once the community's there for a couple of years? And
The HOA.
The HOA will. That's very interesting. These pipes are under the ground and they flow through there's a number of housing units. They go under the ground into the lake, and the others go into the canal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that the only area, or is that just illustrative?
That's just an example of one area.
So they will be throughout this new development, and the HOA will have responsibility for it?
Yes, and I'll show you, actually, I have a couple sections that'll explain it even further for you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Go ahead. Commissioner Baxter, did you want to?
I was just going to follow up, Madam Mayor. So the pipes running from the current houses would go under or through with an easement the new homes, and the new HOA would have to pay to maintain the drainage for the existing homes.
That's correct. Yes. So the existing homes drain onto the golf course. We have to take that drainage into our system, and the new HOA, anything within the boundaries of the new HOA has to be maintained by that HOA.
Thank you, Commissioner. Go right ahead, sir.
Again, this is how far we've gone in regards to the flows. This was prepared for us by our civil engineer, who is here to answer any additional drainage questions. But you can see the flows, you can see that historical flow, those small wavy purple arrows that you can see, that historical flow that's coming onto our site. We have to accommodate all of that drainage onto our site and again into our drainage system. So this is an example. This would be a lake section. You can see that yellow line. I put that yellow line there. That would be the back of an existing lot. That's the back of an existing home. This would be an existing home that's adjacent to one of the lakes or one of the open spaces. And you can see that everything is going to be sloped into our site. Nothing slopes back onto the existing Cypress Creek community. And in regards to those homes that have that do not have a lake beside them, where we have to get the water to the lake, again, you can see that line, that property line. That's the edge of the back of the existing lot. It flows onto our site. It goes into our drainage system, and it outfalls through those pipes in between the homes, right, ultimately into a lake. This is the separation. So this is the in between the existing homes and the proposed homes. You can see this is what a back-to-back unit looks like in Cypress Creek, right? And so they have minimum rear setbacks of approximately about 15 feet on either side. So those homes are about 30 feet between each other on the back-to-back examples of the existing homes. What we're proposing with the easements that we're talking about in regards to drainage, with the expanded buffers that we have, with our expanded rear setbacks that we're going to have in our homes, you're not talking about 30 feet in between homes with no buffer. You're talking about approximately 120 feet with upgraded landscape buffers as part of our conditions of approval. Again, this is just another example. This is one on the southern side. Again, approximately 100 feet in between the proposed and the existing homes.
And sir, I'm going to interrupt you again for just 1 minute. Commissioner Baxter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you go back to that slide, please? On the other one. Nope.
Forward?
The site map. Forward, please. There you go. At the top of this map, there's a very narrow distance between those homes? You're saying there'll be at least 100-foot between,
So that is actually that's this section here. Because what we have is there's approximately about 20 feet, if you look on the left, that's the existing home. You have about 20 feet to the property line. And then due to existing easements, the proposed landscape buffer, and then the rear setbacks that we have within our house, within our lots, because those lots are a lot deeper, they're about 150 feet deep there. We have approximately, it's about 118 feet in between those homes, in that location that you were asking about.
so not property line, but house to house, there'll be about 100
That's
feet?
correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
This is some of the architecture. I'm not going to get into Toll Brothers product. I think everybody's very familiar with who they are and the types of products that they have. It's a very upscale community. In regards to the national home builders, they offer the highest price point of any national home builder, so that they will be an upscale.
Let's go back for a minute, Mr. Prophet. Let's go back to that. Is that the rendering that you're showing there? I can't read quickly enough that you changed the slide on me. But is that the recreation center?
No, these are the backyards of proposed homes.
Very good. Thank you. Very nice. Thank you, sir.
And this is some of the architecture that is being proposed. It will be a mix of, again, 1 and 2 story. 50% will be 1 story, 50% will be 2 story. There's 4 models of each, and approximately, I think, about 3 different variations of each model. So it's going to be, they will be very unique and again, larger Toll Brothers homes. This is just to reiterate the outreach that has happened over the last year. We continue to want to work with the neighbors in regards to concerns, all the way up until including some additional conditions of approval over this last week, both included in the staff report, both agreed upon in the add delete. I'm not going to go through them all. We're happy to answer any questions. They're in the record. We do have additional conditions that we have talked to staff about. One of the last meetings and one of the concerns that Commissioner Baxter had mentioned along Palo Verde is that specific section of homes. So we do request to include in the condition of approval for those homes that are adjacent to an existing home that we not only go above and beyond for that section along Palo Verde to have the 20 feet, but also to be upgraded to a 30-foot buffer in width along those sections to allow for additional landscape. We also have, again, that 1 acre of open space in up along Military Trail. We have agreed to include a condition of approval to allow for the development of a dog park. Up until now, there's been nothing planned for the site, to be honest. It's just been open space. We are in agreement that we would develop that as a dog park to the benefit of both the proposed community as well as the existing Cypress Creek community. Again, staff believes that, has mentioned in the staff report that we do meet the standards for the PUD rezoning.
Excuse me, just 1 second again.
Yes, ma'am.
That way we don't have to go back over these slides. These special conditions that you, I love the condition of the dog park. I know we discussed that when you came into my office. I think that so many people want and appreciate a dog park. I appreciate that too. Secondly, a thing that we discussed was, what are you going to do with the 2.5 acre civic use that has there that you've moved over by the trail?
So the 2.5 acre civic site right now is shown on the master plan as public civic, because that's what's required to be shown as we go through the process. Originally, we actually had asked to buy out of that requirement, which is very typical. Palm Beach County Prem staff has asked for us to dedicate that, which is not anything new. So we've shown that as right now as being dedicated to Palm Beach County. I do know that there has been concerns raised by the community as well as by Cobra and the adjacent community Mirror Lakes across the street in regards to what is going to go within that civic site, what are the traffic impacts. Right now there's traffic concurrency through our approval for that site. As of right now, I don't want to speak for the county, but it doesn't sound like there's any plans imminently for what will go there. But as of right now, it will be dedicated to Palm Beach County.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. And then the third thing, actually, is you're going to have a child care center within either the recreation center?
Yes, yeah. So we talked about that with Toll Brothers, and there is the ability based on, yes, to allow for room within the clubhouse for that, yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Again, staff does recommend approval. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. Zoning Commission did recommend approval. And again, we have gone through the COBRA process since it is within their boundaries, and they do recommend approval as well, and I believe is here to speak in support of the application.
Thank you. It was very thorough. Commissioner Weiss, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple things I want to go over with you, and it may end up needing staff to jump in on it. So who maintains the L23 and Stanley Weaver canals?
Lakewood Drainage District, correct, Jeff? Yeah, Lakewood Drainage District, yeah.
And so they will continue to be responsible for maintaining those canals?
They will, although we will have to upgrade the L23 to standards as part of our site development.
So currently, the L23 does not meet standards?
Portions of it, correct.
And so you'll be upgrading that. In regards to the drainage, I've been told that there was a permit or something from South Florida Water Management requiring 65 acres, not of lakes, but doesn't designate how much water they hold. I don't know what that means.
My team running up to answer this, but I'm not the civil engineer. Jeff could answer the question on the permit.
Go right ahead,
He's not
sir.
running.
So identify yourself for the record.
Jeff Schnars Engineering.
Sir.
There was a permit. I'm going to do this off my memory. I think it was December 1976. That included 65 acres of lake. The permit was modified in December of 1983 to include 15 acres of lake within the golf course property. The permit was again modified 1986 for an additional 1.03 acres of lake, for a total of 16.03.
So, and do they have a depth requirement to them of how much water they're supposed to hold, or they could be 1 inch or they can be 10 feet?
The lakes out there are shallow. The typical.
But is there, to your knowledge, does the permit have any specifics on that?
Typically, lakes are a minimum of 12 feet deep. The ones out there are not that deep. The proposed lakes will be at least that deep.
So it's not about, it's about an area rather than
Correct.
cubic feet of water or gallons or?
Surface storage occurs above the water level.
All right, that's okay. I would like you, Mr. Brophy, to go over these conditions because I think they're significant and I think the public needs to hear them, specifically, especially around the conditions as it relates to I know there were questions about soil mitigation and that sort of thing, or I don't know if staff wants to take, is that in part of your staff report to talk about that?
Yeah, I could talk about that when we get to my presentation.
I'll let staff, since we're conditioning it, and you're the ones who have to do it.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay. If there's no other questions, comments for the applicant, I think we're ready for staff.
Yes. Again, good morning. Lisa Merritt, the zoning director. And I am here representing the zoning division. And we also have with us today representatives from the planning division, traffic, engineering, land development, and environmental resources management, which is ERM. So if I say the ERM acronym, it's environmental resources management. Now, as Mr. Brophy went over, this application is before you for 3 requests. One is to do the rezoning. This slide shows the area that's proposed to be rezoned in green with the red dots, and that is surrounded by these Cypress Creek homes. And as mentioned by Mr. Brophy, this property in the early 60s went to building permit to develop a golf course. And this graphic shows a 1965 of an air photo of what the golf course looked like. Then in 1977, as Mr. Brophy mentioned, the applicant went to the Board of County Commissioners and received 2 different approvals, well, the property owner at the time, completely separate. The one of Resolution 77592 established the special exception for the golf course and a clubhouse and accessory facilities, whereas the other resolution is for RS zoning on the surrounding unrecorded subdivision. Now, the density at the time was established by the land development regulations, and that density was related to the, oops, where did the graphic go? Oh, there we go back. And I don't know why it disappears, but the density was, it's really established by the zoning district. So the site after that was platted, the golf course was platted in 1978. By condition of approval, it was required as far as that special exception. And this slide shows what the code looked like in the 1970s when the golf course was established. It shows that the density is essentially a fact of the RS zoning district on the surrounding properties by minimum lot size. There wasn't technically a number per acre in the 70s. When you developed, when the county adopted the 1980 plan, and this is shown here, we established the first future land use designations and the first future land use map. This site is shown on the left, zoom in with the yellow box. The north half of the site was low to medium residential density. The south half was medium to medium high residential density. This graphic shows that what those densities were, and the RS zoning, and again, this is for their surrounding Cypress Creek, the density range was at standard zoning 3 units per acre, and that's what this Cypress Creek development is. It's a 3.002 units per acre. Now, if the property had done a PUD at the time, and if it was a single project and not 2, it could have asked for up to 5 units per acre or even up to 8 by TDR. In 1981, this is what the golf course looked like. Some of the homes are coming in the surrounding Cypress Creek. This is 1989, what the property looked like. And then in 1989, the Board of County Commissioners adopted the second comprehensive plan. That's called the 1989 comp plan, and this is what we have today. Now, what staff did as part of this process is on properties throughout the county, the Board of County Commissioners, and I'll go back, the Board of County Commissioners did not like this plan. It had large swaths of density and a variety of densities all over. The board didn't like it. So in 1988, they had a visioning series of meetings, and they decided they wanted a lot more specificity. So staff had the project of going through every inch of developed and undeveloped land in unincorporated county and establishing a number on that. And that number was related to the new series of future land use designations. So you see this site here shows that there's a 5 and a 12 and a UT, which is utilities, transportation. There's another 5 and then there's a 2 right in the center of this area. Now, that future land use designation said that that property, anything that you can see within the boundary of the 2 can request up to 2 units per acre. So it is with the 1989 plan that the comp plan and the future land use map got involved in the assignment of density. So that golf course was assigned a density of 2 units per acre, and the 122 acre golf course can request today 142 dwelling units. This is not a planned unit development. I know there's been a lot of confusion that this was a planned unit development, that density was clustered over. It was not the case because this predates the establishment of LR2.
Very good. And I'm going to interrupt you at this time. Commissioner Weiss.
Yeah, I think you may have misspoke. Did you said 142 units?
242.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Did I say that?
Yes.
242. So what we do to calculate a future land use density, we take the acreage, 122, and we multiply it by 2, and it's 242. Thank you for correcting me. And the request is for 152 today, which is far below that 2 units per acre. And again, on the left here in this graphic, it shows the golf course in 1965. Then on the right, it shows the surrounding properties in 1989 when LR2 was established. And then on the right, I changed to the graphic today. In 2018, the applicant and the surrounding community individually approached the county and asked what is the development potential and what is the approval of this site. This letter issued by John McGillis, the zoning director at the time, stated that these are two different approvals. It is not a planned development, and the property has the right to request an independent planned unit development. And so the applicant did, the prior applicant did, and that proposed PUDs was before this board in 2018 or 2019, and that was denied. But where we are today is with this site plan. They're asking for the proposed plan unit development. And staff is recommending approval because this request meets all of our standards in the ULDC. And we talked about compatibility a little bit with Beach Road. When we look at compatibility, we look at scale, mass, and character. And in this particular, and use, of course. And in this particular instance, there's existing single-family homes that are proposed by this application to have next to them single-family homes. They're the same use and they're a comparable size and dwelling. Now, there has been discussions of the heights of the structures. All of the existing structures that are built, the homes in Cypress Creek, they are allowed to develop up to 35 feet in height. So there are single-family homes with maybe 1 story, and there may be 2 stories. I'm not 100% sure, but we do know, as the applicant presented, that they are requesting 1 and 2 stories, and that is very common in single-family developments. There are no zero lot line like there was proposed in the prior application. And this is the site plan that shows some of the uses that were discussed, and we spent a lot of time with the applicant and and land development talking about soil contamination and drainage. And Olive will speak shortly about the drainage requirements, but before we do that, to mention some of the conditions of approval that we modified. So what we did is we added a series of conditions of approval that was in the add delete, including for the excavation. When this comes through with a more detailed analysis, we're asking for an updated application for the type 2 excavation requirements. We added a series, and on page 4 of the first add delete, there's a series of health department conditions of approval regarding dust and the transportation of soil, and to ensure that the surrounding neighborhood is protected. And these were conditions of approval that were established at the fountains, and we built them in this request in the add delete. We also have conditions of approval about silt fencing around the perimeter, and we also added to use limitations prohibiting clearing or earthwork operations on Saturday, Sunday, and holidays, limiting construction traffic, prohibiting construction traffic from Palo Verde. And also, there's 2 added conditions of approval that throughout the development and through the final certificate of occupancy, that the applicant provide quarterly updates on the soil remediation to the zoning division and the Cypress Creek Property Owners Association. And throughout the development of the project, through the last certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall host 2 meetings on the status of that soil remediation. And then there's additional conditions of approval from engineering, requiring that the property owner ensures that the historical flows from the adjacent properties for drainage are maintained. And then we have those additional protections. There are 12 or 13 conditions of approval that Environmental Resources Management has added to this for extensive protections about the soil cleanup that would be involved in the site, both at the local and at the state level. And then I would like to turn over to Olive Bailey.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Olive Bailey, Assistant Land Development Director. So what I put together for you this morning are 2 slides. what I wanted to clarify is our review process as far as engineering is concerned. So if this application is approved, the applicant and the engineer of record are required to submit to us prior to the approval of the final subdivision plan, a historical drainage study. So that's one of the engineering conditions. It's engineering condition number 3 on this application. And in that historical drainage study, they are going to provide to us existing topography, proposed grading at the sections, at the adjacent property sections. They're going to provide any calculations that will help us to understand that they are meeting the requirement by code to accept the historical drainage. If they impede historical drainage, that's an issue. The code does not permit it. And so we've written conditions to ensure that they meet that requirement, that the neighbors don't flood. So prior to them getting their approval of their final subdivision plan, they will have to submit that historical drainage study, and it will have to be approved by staff. During that process, and Mr. Brophy showed the slide with the arrows and talking about the pipes and the easements, we'll determine how wide those easements need to be, where those easements need to be located, and there will be, on the plat that's recorded for the new subdivision, public drainage easements for the historical drainage. But all that comes along with the historical drainage study. After the subdivision plan is approved, they have to submit to land development for technical compliance approval. So during technical compliance approval, they submit all of their engineering plans, the water and sewer plans, the construction plans for paving, grading, and drainage. They submit their surface water management calculations. They'll provide the backup geotechnical reports to support soil storage, for example. All of that is taken into consideration in our evaluation to ensure that they're not increasing off-site stages of the existing properties, which is a big concern. So only when they meet all of our code requirements can we actually issue a land development permit.
How long do you think that's going to take?
So we still have to get through the subdivision approval process, which I don't know. It depends on how well they submit their documents, if they meet our standards. If they don't, then we have to. 6 months. 6 months.
6 months,
Excuse
okay.
me, probably. And then the technical compliance review, that right now is averaging about 6 months as well.
Okay. Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
So the next slide. Just the key points for drainage, big overview. An engineer of record has to submit plans to us. So a licensed engineer, Mr. Schnars, will be submitting his engineering calculations and plans to us for us to review as a staff. Their entire basin must be analyzed to meet our code requirements, and they also have to be analyzed to meet LWDD's drainage requirements, as well as South Florida Water Management District. That basin includes the existing neighborhood, the proposed project site, and the military trail drainage as outlined in engineering condition approval 4. Those permitted stages can't be exceeded. Engineering conditions 6 and 9, if you refer to those in here, and if you'd like me to read them, I can, require for them to meet the existing permitted stages for the surrounding neighbors. If they exceed it, we cannot approve their plans, we cannot approve their calculations. We also added another condition approval for those homes that will be abutting the lakes, the proposed lakes. They also have to meet the code requirement for minimum or maximum stages. And then lastly, in the original South Florida permit, the LWDD L23 canal was used for storage, and that is no longer allowed. So this proposed design has to take that storage and compensate for that. So I'd like to state that in the drainage statement that was submitted, the engineer of record did acknowledge the compensation of the storage in the LWDD L23 canal, the loss of potential storage from the golf course, recognizing that all that has to be taken into account in his design.
God bless you.
And that concludes our presentations. If you have any questions, staff is recommending approval of 3 resolutions as shown on the screen.
Very good. Any questions or comments by my colleagues? Commissioner Weiss, you're recognized.
Yeah, I want to go over the conditions of that you're putting in place. I know I'm familiar with what was done at the fountains in regards to soil mitigation, but I think it's important that both the public know and the folks that are here in the audience understand what we did in regards to fountains, and I think there's some important points in, I mean, because I know it's a concern of surrounding people when you start moving around that soil and their safety and welfare. And so I think it's important to understand what all you all are requiring on this development. So can you just, and I don't need you to go into minute detail, but I think it's important to go over what those conditions are.
Yes, we added a very lengthy health requirement of conditions of approval, but I think if Michael Stahl would like to come to the podium, because what we don't have in the handout in the add delete is all those extensive environmental conditions of approval that have been worked out through this morning. The health department ones are all regarding dust control, dust mitigation, hours to ensure that the neighbors are protected. And yes, we have
There's also
here.
monitoring requirements of dust monitors and
Yes,
wind
dust monitors
speeds.
and such. And Michael, would you like to expand on any?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, Michael Stahl, Deputy Director with Palm Beach County Environmental Resources Management. Joining me here today is Patrick Willies, an environmental manager that has also been working on this with us. So essentially, ERM's primary concern here is or one of our primary concerns is contamination that DEP has already acknowledged is on the site. The state has the jurisdiction over the remediation of that contamination. And so what ERM's interest is that we wanted to have assurances that the applicant is going to be coordinating with DEP on that remediation, and that these conditions essentially require them to submit to us what that soil remediation or soil management plan is that they submit to DEP, as well as an approval from DEP that they approve that soil management plan. And then as they move further in the process, they will be required to submit certifications that they are in compliance with the Florida Administrative Code 62-780, which is the criteria for remediation.
So, and I know you have a list, there's a list of requirements from the health department. There was, and my recollection is correct. We had at the time for fountains, because I know there were times when we were contacted, my office was contacted, concerns about whether they were in compliance, and we had building department shut down the site until we could verify that it was meeting those requirements. Is that also a condition? And if it's not, why isn't it in there?
We have all of the health department conditions of approval that were developed for fountains are added to this project. And to ensure that the dust is monitored and that there is no excessive dust or hindering or having any negative impacts on the surrounding residents. The page 4 of the add delete, items 1 with the steps to minimize the dust, A through L, have all of the conditions of approval carried forward. And as
Right.
far as a monitor, I believe we added a monitor. Mr. Brophy, was there, can't read quick enough to find that monitor in here. Unless Wendy can
I
find
saw it yesterday in there somewhere. There's a
Condition
condition.
1A on page 4 talks about prior to the issuance of the first building
There it
permit,
is.
the applicant's supposed to install on-site dust
Real-time
and wind
monitoring.
speed. That one?
Real time? Sounds like Bill
Yeah.
Mayer here.
on-site dust and wind speed monitors around the site perimeter with real-time monitoring to minimize off-site dust migration and other dust emissions from horizontal land development activities at the site consistent with best management practices.
What about for, when they're performing construction, you have vehicles traversing the site and so forth, and what provisions are there in there for that?
We have condition D, 1D, still on that page 4 of the add delete, that talks about the dump trucks transporting the soil off-site. We have condition E that talks about their low speed travel so that it can control the dust of the off-site migration. There is a condition F about the holding of the construction when the wind speeds are greater than 30 miles an hour. And let me see, I think there was some condition I talks about the construction entrances and exits for tracking of the dust off site onto public roads. There's condition J also talking about how the transported materials will be swept from the roadways. And
It says ongoing, but it's not specific. Does that mean daily, hourly, weekly?
They're required to be in compliance at all times. And it says ongoing because it means through the end of construction. Once the site is completely developed and all the properties are sold, this would stop. But throughout, all the way through the final stage of construction, they will have to ensure that there's meeting these standards. And if they're not, we'll have to contact code enforcement and it will have to be shut down.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question. You're going to be doing these studies, and we're going to be monitoring them. But will the people have access to your results from the county in terms of, maybe I should look at you, in terms of what compliance has been completed so far? And how will they get this
So my
information?
experience with other projects, other golf course conversions, residents contact our office and we provide them with what they're asking for. So that's what we have done in the past as far as engineering the drainage concerns. So
How about in our website, the county website? Can we post any of these? If somebody wants to click on this particular project to see what is going on with it rather than telephone calls to your office?
For the soil remediation,
Right.
2 conditions are required for the applicant to provide quarterly updates on the status of the soil remediation to the zoning division and to the Cypress Creek POA. And of course, we can ask for them to keep us up to date on any drainage improvements, but we will have that as well. So we can definitely work more with making that information that we received and the Cypress Creek POA receives transparent for the public.
That'd be very good. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. I think you're done. Standing there, smiling. Would you like to say something?
Sure. I just want to add, Scott Backman on behalf of Toll Brothers. My environmental attorney just shared with me that in addition to all of these conditions, the FDP website, as soon as we file it, as soon as it becomes public record, it is actually available on the website. I'm sure that the county will get some phone calls because people may not necessarily know where to go for the information, but it is available there as well.
It is available. It will be available on the county website. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it. Okay, I think staff, you were proceeding, and go right in and continue.
We're all done.
You're all done. Excellent. Any questions or comments to the staff at this time on this issue? Very good. Now, we have a couple of cards, large number of cards, and I appreciate you all coming and staying this late. We are going to give everybody time to speak your opinion. So with that, I'm going to ask Commissioner Weiss to read 6 names, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. And just to facilitate things, if you could just, you can stand in the aisle, that would be fine. If you have heard your opinion already spoken by someone else, we love to hear you say that. Or if you want to wave in support of your neighbors or of the applicant, we also appreciate that as well. We're going to proceed with this, and we're going to start right now. Go right ahead.
47.
Commissioner Weiss, go ahead and read the cards.
Aaron Halliburton, Kurt Nelson,
Come on up, folks.
Christine Frenoy, Julie Nicholas, Jim Nicholas, and Cameron Hoffman.
Okay, if you do not come up when your name is called, your card will be put on the another pile for another day, but certainly not today. Sir, come on up. You're recognized. State your name.
Hi, how are you? Good morning, Commissioner, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Aaron Halliburton. I'm the current Cypress Creek president. And since Toll Brothers came to us and said that their intent to fill our infill with their homes, my main concern has been the safety, soil remediation, and drainage. Right? So we all know that our golf course is highly toxic. That's why we haven't seen the results. Have you guys seen the results? No? Toll has stated it will be 3 years before they can begin to build due to the blend remediation, which is a lot of guaranteed exposure to arsenic toxins for our neighbors, our elderly, our kids, and our pets. Drainage, we have none. Our community floods now, so now Toll starts the remediation process, and those toxins will be in our homes because the lack of drainage leads them to our homes. Please hold Toll to a site plan that protects our 40-year neighborhood that are going to disrupt it for the next 10 years, and health and safety are in your hands, not the engineers. I understand that Toll has checked all the boxes to move forward, so I'm holding you, Mayor, and Commissioners accountable to do what is right. A yes vote guarantees that there will be flooding and arsenic contamination in our community and not just our neighborhood. Please prevent us from having to go through hold them accountable, please. Because what we're trying to accomplish is there's no room for it. It doesn't make sense. I'm all for True Shots selling their property, but this is just too much in that little bit of area.
Thank you, sir.
Guys.
Sir, to my right, state your name. You're recognized.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Cameron Hoffman, and I live at 4228 Pinecone Lane in Cypress Creek with my wife, son, and 2 dogs. As you know, you participated in a workshop last week about the updates to the FEMA flood insurance rate maps. During this workshop, it was revealed that, with limited exception, all of Palm Beach County should be considered a floodplain, which means any area could be prone to flooding. In fact, staff is recommending approximately $7 million to be spent to update the drainage information for urban areas east of the refuge and interior South Florida water management drainage basins. Cypress Creek is one of those areas. To reduce flood risk and increase discounts offered to county residents that will now have to purchase flood insurance, staff has recommended changes to the building codes that will call for increased open space preservation and higher regulatory standards. These standards would include limiting the amount of fill that can be imported to new development sites, requiring alternative foundations to raise the elevation above ground level, and requiring non-conversion agreements for areas below the base flood elevation. Current building codes are supposed to protect us, but based on the new FEMA maps, even you have concerns that the current codes are not sufficient. Why are we here today? Specifically talking about an older, lower-lying neighborhood that will be negatively affected if a new development is built at a higher elevation while eliminating an essential stormwater storage area. You obviously recognize there is a serious cause for concern since there is such a large focus on finding ways to reduce flood risks for existing communities. So why? Why would you now vote in favor of a plan that will cause the exact situation that you are planning to invest millions in to avoid? Like Commissioner Weiss said at the workshop last week, we're talking about life, health, and safety, which is the top of all of our list. It's about protecting people. Please deny the requests before you because the current site plan is not compatible with and will have an adverse effect on the surrounding land uses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Sir, you're recognized. State your name.
Good morning. I'm Kurt Nelson, a 25-year resident of Cypress Creek Country Club. I'm here to express my opposition to the Toll Brothers' proposed destruction of Cypress Creek Country Club and Golf Course. 3 major topics will be covered. congestion upon congestion. The past 4 to 5 years, 1.2 miles from the front entrance to Cypress Creek were built 4-story towers with 1,118 units, which took our stoplights to grow from 1 to 2 sessions. What I'm hearing is 1,100 daily car trips are incremental if this is approved. 1,100 incremental daily trips. That will no doubt double our congestion. Again, 3-4 lights, maybe more. Incompatibility on 2 levels. The primary reason we bought in Cypress Creek 25 years ago, the houses are unique. It's pretty difficult to find 2 that are similar. You would be, this is in contrast to Toll Brothers, essentially cookie cutter 5 floor plans, incompatible. Our home, like many in the neighborhood, are single story. We just heard 50%, 1/2 of these homes are going to be 2 stories. I don't know any of my neighbors that have a home my size that want a 2-story home parked in their backyard. Incompatible. Incompatible definition, non-consistent or able to coexist with another. Cypress Creek Golf Course reference. This kind of ties everything together. It's important to note in the formative years of this community, this wonderful golf community, the head of Palm Beach Planning and Zoning at that time, in an official planning and zoning meeting, Mr. Ray Liberti, stated, Cypress Creek will remain a golf course community. How long? Into perpetuity. Many boards and individuals often like to make their own definition of that word. It's not right to do that. Perpetuity, the state or quality of lasting forever. We've covered a lot. Let's review. Congestion on congestion. 1,100 incremental daily trips on top of 1,118 units. That's alarming.
Thank you very much, sir.
Incompatibles,
Sir,
incompatible,
sir,
perpetuities,
thank you very much.
perpetuity.
I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Go ahead. You're recognized.
Hello, my name is Jim Nicholas. I live with my wife, daughter, and granddaughter at 4275 Fox Trace. And I'm opposed to rezoning the golf course until the application is based on an allowable 117 homes versus the 152 that you heard today. Even my 3-year-old granddaughter knows it's bad to double dip. You don't take a bite of a chip and then put it back in the dip. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Our neighbors have shown county staff, commissioners, and Toll Brothers zoning meeting minutes from nearly 50 years ago documenting that the allowable density was transferred from the Weaver-owned golf course to the Weaver-owned Cypress Creek neighborhood. These minutes, referring to Cypress Creek as a PUD as far back as 1977, said, and I quote, "The densities that would have been allowed on the golf course may be added to the development," end quote. The meetings referred to those 2 properties as integrated entities. It is how Weaver Development was able to put 437 home sites on just 154 acres. Density from the 123-acre golf course that Toll Brothers now wants to build on was shifted to Cypress Creek. And while the term LR2 was not used at that time, Cypress Creek was later zoned LR2 by your predecessors, even though 437 homes on Cypress Creek's 154 acres adds up to a higher density. Someone at the time knew that that density transfer happened. Otherwise, why would we be LR2 today? So despite what Mr. Brophy showed you today as history, it was missing a very key point on his slide, which was dated the same day that his slide showed that there were 2 separate entities, was that this density was transferred on May 26, 1977. And if you were able to do the math, and we had sent out one of these things that kind of showed available density, once you take that all into effect, there's only 117 available homes. It's never convenient to do what's right, especially when there are millions of dollars on the line and the threat of a lawsuit from Toll Brothers should this not go through. That fear does not make it okay to ignore the history of the property. Please require Toll Brothers to lower the density prior to approving. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, you're recognized.
I think you call, excuse me, I think you called my name, Chris Francois.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be brief. I've lived at 4768 Nolina Lane for about 6 years now. It's a great community. And I just want to note that residents at Cypress Creek, they've been using the ponds and the canals since the beginning. And they've been using it, and even though they don't own the golf course. So, and our board is 100% against negotiation. They've told us that privately and whatever. So I just want to say that I think that Toll Brothers would be an asset to our surrounding community, and I urge you to vote for the development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Julie Nicholas. I live at 4275 Fox Trace in the Cypress Creek neighborhood. I can't tell you the number of times in recent weeks that I've heard someone say to me, trust the experts, when I've shared my concerns about the dangerous toxins in the soil or seemingly inadequate flooding and drainage planning. Trust the experts, it will all be handled. But it's these very same experts that have a nearly $1 million EPA settlement for violating the Clean Water Act because of polluted stormwater discharge. The experts had violations at 370 different construction sites across 23 states per the EPA. Let that sink in. Toll Brothers had 370 different construction sites that were flagged with violations. Okay, so that was over a decade ago. Surely they won't repeat their mistakes, right? Not so fast. I spent hours talking to neighbors surrounding the former Apple Ridge Golf Course in New Jersey, a Toll Brothers golf course conversion that took place 6 years after the EPA settlement. These neighbors tell me that Toll Brothers reportedly violated its own engineering plan, clear-cutting the land, meaning wiping out trees, all at one time versus removing and remediating the arsenic-laden soil slowly, 1 acre at a time. Because of that change in approach, when it rained, that soil ran off the golf course, down local streets, and into area rivers, as captured in publicly available video. Because the neighbors couldn't get any help from the experts, they used their own money to do water testing on the properties and in the local rivers, finding high levels of arsenic downstream of Toll Brothers' site. According to published reports, it's only when neighbors were able to capture the disturbing runoff video did the local municipality order a stop work order requiring Toll Brothers to remedy the sediment discharge prior to proceeding. The experts haven't gotten it right before. Why should we trust the health and safety of our families or trust that our lower-lying homes will be protected from flooding in this project? We contend that this property is the most complicated golf course conversion they've ever done. Commissioners, please don't let Toll Brothers experiment with our lives. If you approve, please require independent environmental oversight and ask, as a condition of your approval, and ask the applicant to pay for our independent drainage expert, which we are currently paying from our own dime. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, you're recognized. Come on up, state your name.
I didn't call her.
Oh, you haven't
Heather,
called
yes,
her
my
yet?
name
Hold
is
on just
Terry.
1 second.
Oops.
Go ahead.
I
Mr.
haven't-
White,
I-
did you call her?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
I've
just
gone
give us
through
your name
6,
and we'll
so
find it.
I'm gonna go
Terry
find her.
Townsend Knuth.
Pardon me?
Terry Townsend Knuth.
Got it.
Go right ahead, ma'am.
4251 Fox Trace, like many of my neighbors here. I'm going to repeat a lot of what you've heard, but I feel like it deserves repeating. 8 days ago, I was walking my dogs. I saw boring going on by the company doing soil samples 8 days ago. Since then, they also put some pipes into these holes. They're just testing some of this soil. There's no way we could have an accurate reading from 8 days ago. If we do, then I apologize if I'm wrong. I don't see how you can have everything because the toxins that they need to look for, it's got to take more than 8 days. We worry about if they do till up and remove, I believe they said 10% What is going to happen to our air quality when they're tilling this land up, when they're digging it up? What is going to happen to the water, the runoff? We have dogs, children, adults, young and old. What are we going to be breathing? What are we going to be surrounded by? Also, military is already congested. We're in gridlock. Everybody's got road rage. Even Toll Brothers' very own traffic study admits that Military Trail between Boynton Beach and Old Boynton will be backlogged without project traffic at the proposed project build out. The traffic from the proposed new development will spill out from a single entrance onto Military Trail. There will be an estimated 1,500 to 20 net daily trips based on data that's 2 years old. As you know, Palm Beach County has also proposed a government office building on the adjacent Civic Pod, which could generate an additional 621 daily trips in and out of Military Trail. Toll Brothers has been interested in connecting the Civic Pod to Cypress Creek Palo Verde Drive, our privately owned and maintained road. This is a major concern for Cypress Creek residents, as it will be more dangerous and difficult to enter and exit the community from the Palo Verde gate. The applicant has claimed that in 1960 era easement gives them this access. We have a different interpretation of the easement and do not agree with they have the right to use of our roads like they claim. This will also impact the access for the dog part. Interestingly, when a historic document benefits the developer, they're the first to embrace it. But when our historical documents support lower density and drainage concerns, as examples, then the historical documents don't seem to count. Why is that? If you don't deny this flawed project, please at least consider allowing Toll Brothers to buy out of its Civic Pod requirement to prevent the traffic nightmare. Also, please ask the applicant to seek access options that do not involve Cypress Creek's private roads.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you for
exactly
letting me
3
speak.
minutes. Okay, as you hear your name, come on up. Go right ahead, Commissioner Weiss.
Kenneth Haney, Nancy Willie,
Kenneth, come on up.
Rainier Meseritz, Marianne Meseritz, Judy Thomas, and Linda Diane Bushman.
Very good. Be careful on your way up. Ma'am, you're recognized. State your name.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Willie, and W-I-L-L-E, and I live at 4788 Nolina Lane. I've lived in Cypress Creek for over 40 years. First, believe it or not, first as an owner-builder on the east side, and for the last 26 years on Nolina. My neighbors have always been like family, and as you can see, the community divide is heartbreaking. The golf course is private property, and unfortunately, only 10 residents were members before it closed. To clarify, we're zoned RS, like the staff also stated, with the green space being our individual yards. Despite our HOA fees of $350 a quarter, we have no amenities, and according to our documents, we're not a gated community. Each lot owner, however, does own up to the middle of our private roads, which are in disrepair, a concern voiced by many members. It's important to note that Toll will not have access to our private roads, nor will we have access to theirs. So Cypress Creek surrounded by diversity, single-family homes, not gated, townhouses, villas, mobile home parks where my parents lived, and across from Palo Verde are 2-story homes, Artesia. So with that, and with the staff, when she stated really clearly what compatibility means, in my opinion, Toll Brothers is compatible, and also a duplex would be compatible. So back to Military Trail and Mirror Lakes, they approved the project during the COBRA meeting, but they opposed the county civic pod, which we also opposed due to traffic. So please vote in favor of the staff's recommendation for the Toll's rezoning application, including the civic pod buyout. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Sir, you're recognized.
Good morning. My name is Rainier Meseritz. I live on 4855 Bucito Road. And I've listened to a lot of the arguments over the past 2 years that you've heard today, why people are against the project. I understand and sympathize with a lot of those arguments. However, I also look at things a little bit differently. I'm not as complicated as some of the people seem to be. My motto is KISS, keep it simple. I think there are only 3 alternatives to this project, or to the what they call golf course, which is currently more of a wasteland. The first alternative is to leave it as it is. If you leave it as it is, somebody has to mow the grass, somebody has to keep it up. The cost of this is about $150,000 a year. So it's great to have that as it is now. You can have a dog park there, you can walk your dogs there, you can ride your golf cart. It's all trespassing, but that's what people are doing. So I don't believe that that's a viable alternative. Second alternative is to rebuild the golf course. Would be great. I'm a golfer, I'm a member of a private course. The problem with that is it costs a lot of money. I think many of you will know Quail Ridge. Quail Ridge is spending millions to renovate their course. Not only that, they're tearing it apart. So all the toxins that people talk about, they're coming up there as well. So, I don't think that that's an alternative that's going to happen. People think that it may happen, but it's a small area, so I don't see a golf course being built there. So the last alternative is to build houses. I don't see any other alternative. So Toll Brothers seems to be one of the best builders in the country. So if that's the only alternative, I would support and do support having Toll Brothers build. So I would request you to approve.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm Linda Diane Bushman from 4789 Pepperbush Lane. My family has lived in Cypress Creek for 8.5 years, and I support Toll Brothers, as does my family. Over the last 6 years, building and zoning has heard a lot from Cypress Creek about irrigation, toxins, privacy, compatibility, and green space concerns. I recently discovered that in 2019, our POA had a chance to own, free and clear, 80% of the True Shot land and thereby resolve most of those concerns. That's right, True Shot was going to have donated 97 acres to our POA. There were conditions, of course. For instance, we could only use those 97 acres for a private park or for a golf course. And on the remaining 25 True Shot acres, we'd have to support a massively reworked site plan for luxury townhomes fronting and accessible only from Military Trail, leaving green space or lake views for our golf course homes. The donation even included an existing irrigation system and payment of year-one land maintenance, so we had time to figure out how to use and maintain that new green space for ourselves. When board representation rejected the new proposal without community input, the developer and True Shot mailed a letter to POA members outlining the proposal and inviting all to a town hall. I don't recall receiving the letter, but I understand that the action item from that meeting was for Cypress Creek to request and schedule an exploratory meeting by a certain date. No follow-up meeting was ever requested, and the opportunity slipped away. I only bring this up because even such a promising offer to address so many concerns and add amenities for our families didn't satisfy Cypress Creek enough to even explore. In closing, I pray that we'll react differently with Toll Brothers. Instead of roadblocking, let's lean into Toll Brothers with transparent, good faith negotiations to benefit all and start to heal our very fractured neighborhood. Please approve the Toll Brother project, and thank you all, the commission and the staff, for your service to Palm Beach County. I would like to submit into the record a copy of the letter from 2019 that went out to the residents.
If you could give that to
Staff.
our staff, that would be
great.
fine. Thank you very much for that. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Hi, I'm Marianne Mesritz. I live at 4855 Bosita Road. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, not really. Go right ahead.
Want me to start over? Hi, I'm Mary Ann Mesritz. I live at 485 Waseda Road. I have a combination here of 60 letters that I have compiled from my neighborhood and east and west side supporting Toll Brothers. I'd like to submit them at the end of my presentation. Of those 60 letters, about 20 of the letters live on the golf course, and they have all signed approval for Toll Brothers and the redevelopment. For a few comments, one of the residents always aware that he bought onto it 23 years ago, aware that he had no final investment. The day he arrived, has arrived to be settled, allow Toll Brothers. The previous owners, Tushrat, have owned it for the last 6 years. They are paying over, the private owners are paying over the Toll Brother and, True Shot owners are paying over $150,000 a year to maintain the golf course, to mow the lawns, clear out the lakes that the opposition is using for their irrigation. And those lakes are still contaminated if they're contaminated. These are the shallow ponds that the golf course supposedly was to draining in that was never actually adequate in the beginning. So I would like to see the Toll Brothers project approved, as long as as long as they follow all the recommendations of the board, the health for you understand what I mean.
I understand what you're talking about. Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, come on up to the podium, state your name, you're recognized.
Thank you. My name is Judy Thomas, and I live with my husband at 4712 Cypress Drive South. We've lived in Cypress Creek community since February 2018. We've also known that the golf course was private property. We never have paid any fees to maintain the golf course, and we do not own any part of it we do not own the property where the golf course sits. Shortly after we moved in, the golf course closed. At that time, the owners of the golf course were trying to sell to another developer. Board directors at that time did everything in their power to obstruct the sale. The bottom line was, had this developer been able to acquire the land, the community would have received between $500,000 and $1 million that could have been in our HOA treasury. Fast forward to 2024. When Toll Brothers became interested in developing the land, our HOA board, the same ones who obstructed the previous sale, have fought tooth and nail trying to sabotage the sale of the property to Toll Brothers. All of our neighbors that we talk with accept the fact that this land will be sold and developed. The same neighbors realize that it behooves the community to have high-end developers such as Toll Brothers build the homes. My husband and I realize that the property will not be a golf course. We think Toll Brothers is a good developer who builds beautiful homes. We believe Toll Brothers will follow the county and state requirements for drainage and toxins. We believe these homes will not only raise the value of the homes in the Cypress Creek community, and believe Toll Brothers has offered a better proposal than any other residential development proposals. Please approve this project so our community can move forward and the board can spend time taking care of our physical community and not spend any more time or money following development of a piece of property that we do not own. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that opinion. Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ken Haney, and I have lived with my wife Madeline, children, and sometimes grandchildren at 4243 Fox Trace for 37 years. My home abuts the golf course. I am here today to speak to you about my concerns about the contaminated soil that is going to be dug up on the golf course. And the fact that Toll Brothers is not required to remove this poisonous soil, but rather are allowed to spread it over many acres directly behind our homes. They have stated they will keep 88% of the soil they dig up. The Cypress Creek Golf Course was in operation for almost 60 years. So that's 60 years worth of pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, fertilizers in the ground. Before that, it was a dairy farm where cattle dipping in 3,000-gallon baths of a 20% arsenic solution was required by the federal government to kill insects. And those baths had to be emptied and cleaned every 14 days. Because dipping became so costly, they began spraying the cattle with DDT and toxaphene. Has Toll Brothers found one of these cattle bathing sites, and is that why they won't release the results of their soil sampling? This golf course property is unique because it has a history of repeated contamination by chemicals that were removed from the market decades ago due to their toxicity. Some of the soil samples that Pulte took 6 years ago showed that there were 14 times what was considered remediatable soil in that golf course. I would like to suggest to you that this land should never be redeveloped. The extreme concentrations of poisons, their breakdown products, and the persistent legacy chemicals that remain in the ground, arsenic, DDT, and toxaphene, to name just a few, are too big a risk for us to keep talking or taking with our health and the health of our environment. When do we say enough is enough?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bernard, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just a question for staff. This is new to me in regards to this. I guess Cypress Creek was a farm before. Do we know, or?
As far as the history prior to the 1963 building permit for the golf course, I'm not sure what occurred prior to 63.
But if it was a farm, would the current, houses that are built right now would have still been affected by what this gentleman just stated? Is that correct?
Yes, all of the golf course and the houses prior to 63 was one large land area. So if something happened before 63, the odds are it didn't happen like on the shape of the golf course. It may have happened on properties that they currently own and have houses on them.
Okay, so just to make sure, so the current houses that are in Cypress Creek could be contaminated based on what we just heard?
Correct, unless the speaker has a map showing the boundaries of where exactly those vats were in the dipping area. From our records prior to 1963, all of the surrounding houses that are there now and the golf course were owned by the same person.
Okay.
So it very well could be, it was one project. So, it wasn't a project. It was just a parcel and farms and things.
Just one more question. I know Commissioner Weiss had mentioned in regards to if there are any, while the development's being built, if there are any contamination are we able to stop the project as it's proceeding?
Yes. With those conditions of approval that were added, yes.
And is it spelled out just to make sure that it is spelled out that we can?
Yes. When the Board of County Commissioners adopts conditions of approval with a resolution, if there's any violation of those conditions of approval, we could do a stop work order.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss, and then Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm following up on what Commissioner Bernard was asking about. So going back to when it was 89, I think, when they did most of the building over there. Is that when most of those homes got?
Let me see. Could you go? Could you go back? Did you go back? Can you go back to mine? Let me see if I can get this.
So here's my question. At the time that those homes were built, What was the requirement for soil remediation for those homes? Because
I would
my
look-
because my understanding is today, anywhere you allow building, that's, so unless you cap it off with cement or something, the soil has to be remediated. And then if you're putting residential, it also has to be remediated regardless that it's underneath the house.
Yeah, perhaps can speak on any past or land development on past soil mediation requirements, but I know that from the subdivision requirements that the county didn't exist when this got the building permit in 1965 for that golf course. And then as houses were built in the 70s and into the future, this is a picture from 1981. I mean, it wouldn't have been reviewed the way that it's under the scrutiny now. And I don't know if Michael knows about the 1960s, any kind of analysis for construction?
And unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that, Commissioner. We can research it and get back to you. But
It's
as I had mentioned
only
before,
germane to this discussion, so that I appreciate it.
It falls under the jurisdiction of the state, who oversees it. So we can take a look at it and get back to you with that information if you like.
Considering there was no zoning in 1965 and no future land use designation, and the way that a property owner, this wasn't originally an unrecorded subdivision, so you could go to the tax assessor map and you draw up some lots and then you just sell them and people just build on them. I think the 60s and 70s regulatory oversight was not what it is now, I mean, I would say.
All right.
May I suggest something? I'm going to call on you in a minute, Commissioner Baxter. We're going to survey this land as part of this proposal, especially that on the golf course, which appears, we already know, has contaminants. Can we also review, or survey, examine, inspect the land that is presently used by the homeowners of Cypress Creek?
I don't think we could do that because it's private property.
It's private property. Has it been, do we have the owner of that private property here?
They're all here.
I know, but what I'm saying is that do we know if or not the soil that Cypress Creek is built on is contaminated? We don't. Okay, all right. And is that a state issue that would be? Can we, if the HOA president of HOA of Cypress Creek would want us to do that, then let's give him or her the connection with the state of Florida to review and examine the soil upon which these folks have been living for so many years. And I think that may answer, if it's not a county thing, that may answer the issue of whether or not there's contaminants under the soil, in the soil of Cypress Creek. Okay? Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. It's for staff, but thanks for coming on. What if we find that the soil these homes were built on is contaminated? How does that impact the overall project?
It is contaminated.
Individually constructed houses, like shown on the right of this graphic here, if they have existing contamination, that's on an individual basis on how they might want to address each individual property owner. There was a lot of agriculture. There still is a lot of agriculture. Agriculture is great. We have about 450,000 acres of agriculture in our county, mostly in your district, and a lot in your district in the Ag Reserve. And a lot of land, as you could see in these graphics, was built on agricultural lands. And a lot of the land in unincorporated county was built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when there weren't the scientific analysis that is there now for the soils. So these houses that were built from the mid-60s, mostly in the 70s and 80s that were there, I don't know that there was any analysis on if they were contaminated before they were built. Or what would happen now if they discovered that they had contaminated yards.
I'm going to leave that for now, thank
Okay.
you. Actually, real quick, Mayor, at some point, I would like to know if we're taking a break.
Okay, well, it is 12:09, and approximately how many cards do we have left, Commissioner Weiss?
I think we've probably got about 30.
30 cards, all right. Unless people will speak for a minute, I don't think that's going to happen. So why don't we break at 12:30 for 30 minutes? I'm looking at my colleagues here, and then come on back and finish it up. So with that, Commissioner, are you finished right now? Okay, Vice Mayor Marino, you're recognized.
Thank you. Scott, you want to come up? Or either one of you. How long has the golf course been closed?
I know it's 7 or 8 years. I don't have the exact time frame.
And I'm,
We closed in 2016.
be quiet, please.
Lindsay. Yeah, sorry, it's 6 years. Sorry, I thought it was 2016. It was,
All right.
20.
And in that 6 years, what has been done to the golf course?
In
the
what
sense of,
respect?
has it,
It's been mowed, it's been maintained. The prior developer, not Toll Brothers, did a fair amount of testing that was submitted. That's of record. We acknowledge that there's contamination out there that does need to be remediated. We have an entire environmental team here today, if necessary. We have been on site.
you're done? No, I'm kidding.
We have obviously been on site. We have done some testing. We have been in touch with FDEP. We've been speaking with as well, as recently as I believe a week or two ago, through proper notices that are required by Toll Brothers consultants advising FDEP. They were on site doing some additional testing.
So in the last 6 years, basically the only maintenance done on that has been mowing and whatever minimal, just to keep it so it's not a nuisance.
By the owners or the proposed developers, there have been two. As I think you've heard, obviously, I think some residents are certainly, I don't know what residents are doing on the golf course, if they are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions by the colleagues, go right ahead. Commissioner Weiss, let's get 6 folks up here, and I encourage you all to speak as quickly as you can. Okay, go right ahead, sir.
Benjamin Bailey, Robert Smar, David Dorsett, Kathleen Rhodes, Gordon Deertley, I'm sorry, I can't read that writing, and then Amanda Maxwell.
Sir, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm Benjamin Bailey. First, I want to thank the mayor, vice mayor, and commissioners for taking the time out of your busy days to meet with us in the past few weeks to express our overwhelming support of the Toll Brothers project. I'll make it a little bit quicker. You may hear from others that there's an overwhelming or vast majority of the community that's against the project, but that's not the case. The board had a survey done of all the neighbors. There's 424 homes, 400 are members, which I am one, and then there's 24 non-members of the association. Only about 190 people submitted surveys, so they don't even have a majority of the neighborhood that submitted a survey, and only about 45 of the 190 were adamantly opposed, and actually 84 of the responses were supportive of the project. The people in the middle, to me, is irrelevant because they said that they were opposed to the project, but they wanted the board to negotiate with Toll Brothers, which in order to negotiate and receive concessions, I would assume that they would have to support the project. And just one other topic, which is a little bit different than the survey, but there's one-story homes that they're complaining about, that there'll be two-story homes behind them. Any property owner that I'm aware of in our current development can rip down or add to their house and make it from a one-story to two-story. So then, I think that 1 and 2-story are compatible.
Thank you for your brevity and your opinion. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Hi, thank you, commissioners. My name is Kathleen Rhodes. I live at 9671 Aloe Road, and I have been asked to read this for Sylvia Winkles, who had for years she had a trip planned. So she's in England right now on a cruise, and so here we are. Lucky her. Anyway, so I'm reading this for Sylvia Winkles. She says, I wanted to shed light on the troubling situation our community has faced for the past 18 months. The lack of genuine negotiations and the overwhelming influence of certain individuals on the board have brought us to a standstill. Our board's focus has been on drainage and toxins, areas outside the board's expertise. They often undermine your staff, speaking and treating these trained professionals as if they know better. The survey and our election votes clearly show we are essentially a 50-50 split community, yet our board predominantly supports only those who oppose the Toll Brothers project. According to the future land use for Palm Beach County, Toll Brothers could have built 245 homes. Toll Brothers planned for 160 and reduced it to 152, yet our board continues to demand lower density. Our residents' top priority is the construction of a wall along Lawrence Wall. For over a year, this request has been ignored by our board. These actions are detrimental to our community, and personal motives should not come at the expense of all residents. It is time for our board of directors to acknowledge that effective negotiations are essential for our community's well-being. Boards are meant to serve our best interests, not be driven by personal agenda. Please approve the Toll Brothers project. And I have a little bit left for me, so if that's okay, indulge me a little bit. So I know that after the lawsuit, True Shots did talk to close to 20 investors to develop that property. And they decided on Toll Brothers because of the compatibility, and it is very compatible. And I heard somebody say that no two homes are alike. I've been in my house and not somebody else's house 6 or 8 times, so I know that's not true. So, and we just feel that Toll Brothers is compatible. I and many others agree we couldn't do better than to build these luxury homes. So we're here in support of Toll Brothers, and I'd like everybody who is in support of Toll Brothers to please raise your hand so they can see that.
It's okay, ma'am.
you're
I
in
appreciate
support.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, and we ask you to please consider that.
Thank you very much. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Maxwell. I live at 4017 Aloe Path in Cypress Creek. What's changed since the last time the county commissioners denied the proposed infill redevelopment project in the heart of our neighborhood? First of all, traffic and congestion is so much worse. The Boynton Mall is more than likely to be converted to additional housing. The golf course still floods when it rains heavily. My cul-de-sac is nothing but a lake itself. Dead-end roads are still an acceptable replacement for cul-de-sacs. The number of houses proposed are basically the same as the previously denied project. So also, I wanted to talk a little bit about something else that has been mentioned several times about our board being unwilling to communicate. And in the past 6 years that this has been going on, we have had several votes for new board members every single year. And some of the people that are here today were not elected. It's our whole community that votes, that elects our board. And our board is doing what the community has asked them to do. I appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Sir, you're recognized.
Good morning. I'm David Dorsett. I live at 4745 Palo Verde. As far as development on this golf course, at this moment, Toll Brothers is probably the best offer that we've seen. And do I stand for it? At this time, yes. I wouldn't mind seeing it. Toll Brothers has talked to our board. Our board and some of those discussions have talked about rebuilding or redesigning a access point off of the west end of Palo Verde into Military Trail for the residents of Cypress Creek only. Currently, there is a non-working gate there. hasn't been working for a few weeks. But there is a gate. Toll Brothers proposed putting a roundabout in there that would give access point to the Civic Pod. Apparently your property management was asking for 3 access points. That would give them 1 off of that small roundabout that they were talking about off of Palo Verde. The other would also provide access into the Cypress Creek community for residents only. It was not a public gate. And then there would be a third leg off of it that would be for emergency access only into the new Toll Brothers development. In the event that their main gate was apparently not working for some reason, they could get police, fire, EMS services, and there was also a utilities lift station in that entryway that they would be able to service through that emergency section only. Other than that, the soil mitigation, the drainage, I understand how this works. I've worked in county government with Broward County for 30 years. Nobody's going to get it perfect. Toll Brothers isn't going to get it perfect. Palm Beach County's not going to get it perfect, but we're going to push both entities to get it as perfect as you can. Again, we stand for the development, and hopefully you guys will look at it and let it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your opinion, sir. Come on up, state your name, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. Gordon Dieterle, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, fellow commissioners. My name is Gordon Dieterle. I'm from the law firm of Peter Feynman, PA, and we represent the Cypress Creek Property Owners Association. I am standing in for Mr. Feynman today, who had out-of-town commitments and could not appear. I am authorized to provide the commissioners with his written statement in opposition to the application made by Toll Brothers. The Cypress Creek Property Owners Association, on behalf of a majority of the residents of that development, are strongly opposed to the plan before you today, and we request that it be denied. This is not the first time that a large developer has attempted to shoehorn 152 homes into a golf course surrounded by homes on every fairway and green. The Commission may recall 6 years ago, Pulte Homes came in with a similar plan. The former Pulte Home project that this board rejected had various non-conforming dimensions. About 160 of the Pulte homes, many of them two-story boxes, were running right through a golf course community, built in the 1970s and 80s with 1/3 acre lots. And each home designed and built by a different architect, a different contractor. As you know, Cypress Creek is a PUD community, and the golf course is its green space. Lack of compatibility was the main concern then, and it is still the overriding concern today. Lisa. Though you will hear from many other residents today voicing wide-ranging opinions on why this project should not be approved. And you've heard from some of them already relating to inadequate drainage, toxins like arsenic and toxaphene, flooding concerns, traffic, and emergency ingress and egress, to name a few. While some modifications to the Pulte plan that this board rejected in 2018 have been made, the same lack of compatibility exists in the current proposed project, which should require its rejection. The applicant argues that they have increased some lot sizes and setbacks from the original submission, but the house footprints are larger, such as that for the homes on Palo Verde, for example. The golf course view changes to rear view of another house with maybe a hedge in between. This is not compatibility, and we all know that. We have issues here regarding the setback. On the number of homes that are being proposed, we would request that that amount be reduced from 152 to 126. We also would like to see the setback increased to 50 feet, and the environmental concerns, I think, are obvious before the board and acknowledged by Toll Brothers. And it still remains a big issue. We don't even have the test results from Toll Brothers. For these reasons, this application is premature and should be denied. Thank you for your consideration.
Commissioner Weiss, you're recognized.
Yeah, just a question for staff.
Is Cypress Creek a PUD?
The existing Cypress Creek development is an unrecorded subdivision. It is not a planned unit development.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have called other names. They don't.
Robert
appear to-
Smar.
So, Commissioner Weiss, could you go ahead and call 6 additional names?
I have a question.
Sure. Oh, Vice Mayor Marino, you're recognized.
Following up on that, the comment that the golf course is green space for the PUD is inaccurate. Is that correct?
Correct. The golf course is not the open space for the surrounding unrecorded subdivision.
Thank you.
Okay, go right ahead, Commissioner Weiss.
Here we go. 6 more. Dagmar Braz, Erwin Cohen, Roberta Mockler, Deborah Cady, and Alexandria now Zamani, and lastly, Sophia Young, looks like Youngberg.
Okay. Ms. Braz, you're recognized. State your name for the record.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dagmar Bross. I am here representing COBRA today. Our second vice president is here, who will, we have submitted a letter to you. I'm going to make this very short. We do believe the development is compatible. We do believe that Toll Brothers is they're good builders. But the thing that I wanted to bring up that COBRA is very concerned about is the traffic on Military Trail. Not only is Cypress Creek going to be affected by this, but the neighborhood across the street, which is Mirror Lakes. It is an older community, been active adult for a very long time, so we do have much older residents that live there. They do not have the capability of having a turnoff lane or anything, and there is only 2-car stacking because they do have this little gate that goes up and down. So for that reason and several other, we would ask that the commissioners allow the buyout of the civic site on Military Trail. Toll Brothers has agreed to that. It would make a much more attractive development in the fact that basically Military Trail is their only access point, and it would definitely try to curb some of those traffic trips. Thank you so much.
Ms. Braz. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Hold on one second.
morning.
Madam Mayor,
Sorry.
one quick second.
Commissioner Bernard.
Just wanted to, since the buyout has come up over and over again, I guess with Scott and Jeff, if you can come up and kind of like, should we address this today or should we address this at a later date?
I honestly think it's at the pleasure of the commission. It has come up quite a bit with the neighbors, with COBRA, and in some of meetings with some of you. We originally submitted this application requesting to cash out. I mean, we're going to keep this as open space and beautify and aesthetically improve the area. During the process, Prem asked for the civic pod, which is standard in PUDs that we do around the county, and we said, okay, no problem. It then became an issue through conversations with both the community as well as COBRA. I think what I'm sitting here saying is whether it happens today, because I do think it requires certain board action, or it happens at some point in the future, Toll Brothers is okay with whatever approach it ultimately is decided upon by this commission. But we are certainly willing to cash out if that is the board's decision. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, and so for me, it's just, I look to the district commissioner if we would like to address this today or maybe at a later time period.
Hold on just 1 second. The attorney has to say something.
Yeah, I kind of want to just get staff to clarify procedurally. Isn't that a separate issue that goes through Prem, or how does that work?
How Prem presents to the Board of County Commissioners a cash out is they do it by memo. They do an analysis of the needs. They talk to the county agencies, and they make a recommendation, and they present that to the board. But it's just a memo. It's not something that requires a public hearing, but there is backup that goes with that, of course, that explains the analysis of why they're making their recommendation. And unless they're here, I don't know the standing of their review.
Mr. Rutter?
Just want to add to that point. So yes, Prem will conduct the analysis. I think you've seen in the application here they've identified a use for it. Certainly the board could give direction to cash out as well. I would advise you that properties of this size, it's very difficult for us to get our hands on properties. If Prem has made an identification that it's something that could be used, these size properties don't appear all that often. Further, I'd point out we'll be coming back to you in August based on previous direction regarding civic sites that may not be used for other governmental purposes, possibly having them for housing utilization as well. That's based on previous direction. We'll be talking about that with you in August. So there are a number of moving parts. But again, if the board wanted to give direction, Prem would follow through and process a buyout if that was the direction.
Commissioner Bernard?
Yeah, I know for me, since, hearing some of the concerns in regards to traffic, I'd like for us to kind of like decide, at least give directions, even if we don't decide today. But, I'd like to at least weigh in, so in that way, the residents can know exactly what we're going to do that could potentially impact the traffic.
Mr. Attorney.
Sure, I think in this case, perhaps direction for staff to come back with an analysis so that you have some kind of certainty that it will be brought back to you.
Would that be okay with you, Commissioner Bernard? Okay, so I think with regard to, and the applicant and to Commissioner Bernard, what we're going to do is, as advised by council, we're going to wait until the analysis comes back. We haven't even approved the application yet, so it may be moot in that regard, but we'll wait till the application comes back. There's been an analysis. And then at that time, we will make a determination. So, Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add to this, because it was a surprise to me to hear that we were going to build a 4-story office building here. And when I dug into that, was this done because of the traffic study? They needed to go to the highest use when they did their traffic study for a civic pod.
If there is no proposal for a 4-story structure on the civic pod, but what happens when these reviews occur, we calculate the highest development potential for the civic pod in order to secure that concurrency. So if someone guesstimated or calculated out that that could be there, that would only be for traffic for concurrency purposes, but the odds of that are, I think, would be unlikely. I can't even think of a county office that we would need at this location for 4 stories.
And from what I understand, a lot of the pods that we have like this have become fire stations or sheriff deputy outposts, that type of, it's not, the 4-story office building was strictly for a traffic study.
If there is an analysis like that, it would be just for traffic study.
Very good, thank you. And Mr. Rutter.
I was just going to point out to follow up on Lisa's point. This board would approve what might go on this civic site, much less any civic site. So I don't know where the 4-story came from. I know they assigned, I think it was 20-some-odd thousand square feet of governmental use, and that was as much for concurrency, and that's just a general assignment to have an idea of impact. But the board would make the decision, be it fire station, be it sheriff's substation, library, many other uses way down the road in the future. But that decision has not been made. It would be made by the board.
Very good, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and proceed. And you ladies have to help me out. I think, who is speaking?
I am Roberta
right ahead,
Mokler.
ma'am.
So good afternoon. My name is Roberta Mokler. I have resided at 4788 Pepperbush Lane with my family in Cypress Creek for 28 years. Today I want to address the resolution that the board recorded in 2020. I have a copy of the resolution here for the record. The title of that resolution is Opposing the Destruction of the Cypress Creek Golf Course. It reads, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Cypress Creek Property Owners Association strongly opposes the destruction of the Cypress Creek Golf Course and any proposal from any entity that would develop or construct other facilities that would alter the historic character and intended uses of the Cypress Creek Golf Course. I contend this resolution does not represent the best interests of the community. Flash forward, the lawsuit over title was lost, the country was post-COVID, and Cypress Creek returned to regularly scheduled meetings. Every month, I asked the board to rescind the resolution. Each request was denied. During one Q&A, I polled the board members individually to learn their position. Each replied that under no circumstances would they vote to rescind this resolution. The board brings up drainage and environmental fears, but that's not negotiating. That's the lack of understanding of the governmental regulations along with its process of handling these issues. They asked for golf course homes to continue the unpermitted exploitation of pond water to sprinkle their yards. That is not negotiating for a community. That is not negotiating in good faith. Our community needs help in resolving our exterior perimeters, as well as gate and security issues and road resurfacing. We have no sidewalks in Cypress Creek. Mothers walk babies, elderly walk for exercise. We have children who would like to rollerblade, skateboard. We have bicycle people. The gravel is coming up in our roads. We need our board to focus on these issues. Please help this board understand that Toll Brothers will be approved, maybe not today, but soon, and the time has come to rescind this resolution and negotiate in good faith for community issues without further delay. I support Toll Brothers and hope you approve their plan for Cypress Creek today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Miss, you're recognized.
My name is Alexandra Nazamani, and I live at 4719 Buceta Road. My home abuts the golf course, and I have lived in Cypress Creek my entire life. I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. Think of your favorite memory outside, perhaps a sunny afternoon playing catch with a grandparent or sibling, or a picnic with friends. Hold on to that feeling as I discuss the proposed development of our cherished green space. As a biomedical engineer, I want to emphasize that while innovation is vital, it should never come at the expense of our environment, local wildlife, and health of our community. Engineering is about creating solutions that improve lives. We innovate to enhance safety, sustainability, and quality of life. But at what progress we must ask ourselves, what is the cost of this innovation? The green space is not just land. In its rich history, it is a vital part that fosters community, supports biodiversity, and enhances our well-being. A real-world example is how this green space acts as a drainage basin for our community. As engineers, we have a profound obligation to design solutions that do no harm to others, wildlife, or humans. We must consider the long-term impacts of our actions. Toll Brothers' proposed development will increase traffic, reduce air quality, and diminish our community's quality of life. Sustainable engineering principles urge us to think critically about our broader consequences and decisions. Consider the benefits of preserving green spaces. Studies show that access to parks and natural areas reduce stress and promote a better lifestyle. By protecting this green space, we ensure our community continues to thrive in an environment that encourages outdoor activity and connection. I invite you to reflect once more on what I asked earlier, that memory of being outside. Please choose to preserve the spaces that allow us to create such memories for generations to come. By fostering innovation that uplifts our community without sacrificing our own values. Choosing the right side is not just a decision, it's a commitment to our future. It's about standing up for what truly matters, which is the air we breathe, the wildlife we cherish, and the health of our community. Please do not take the easy path. Choose to be guardians of this precious land and ensure that this green space remains a haven for all, just like the memories we hold dear. I urge you to deny this application. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Miss. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Cady, and I'm a former resident of Cypress Creek, retired and now living about a mile away. I am also a healthcare professional. According to the most recent justification statement submitted by Toll Brothers, they want to redistribute 310,000 cubic yards of highly contaminated soil all over the golf course property, dumping it within inches of Cypress Creek homes. There are many well-documented toxic substances like arsenic, DDT, toxaphene, and paraquat under that turf. The history of chemicals applied to this property poses a unique redevelopment challenge, as Cypress Creek was one of the first golf courses to open in Palm Beach County. The dust that will circulate into our windy environment from digging up this course will have severe health consequences to the people who live in this area. In addition, our big rain events will wash this toxic cocktail into the L25 canal system and further pollute the Lake Worth Lagoon. And Congressman Weiss, I read your newsletter every month. I know you have a real interest in
Gave me a promotion.
in the water. Exposure to these chemicals can lead to skin cancer, lung and bladder cancer, cardiovascular disease, as well as arsenic-induced myocardial infarction, Parkinson's disease, adverse pregnancy outcomes, and decreased cognitive development and neurological issues in children. Please deny this project. An independent environmental inspector should be commissioned to determine if this property is too contaminated to risk exposure to the residents of Cypress Creek and all the surrounding communities that will be adversely impacted by this project. 370 violations in 23 states. Under no circumstances do I trust Toll Brothers to monitor the mitigation efforts that will happen on this golf course. And if we don't disturb the soil, the toxins are not a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Sir, we're recognized.
My name is Irwin Cohn. I live at 8850 Golden Mountain Circle in Palm Beach County. Mayor Sachs, Vice Mayor Marino, commissioners, and extremely essential members of the staff of Palm Beach County, good afternoon. I am honored to be the duly elected second vice president of COBRA. I fully support the letter sent to all the commissioners from COBRA in favor of the proposal at hand, which includes the potential buyout of the civic pad. Development in a growing area such as Palm Beach County is inevitable. It is the role of all of you, with support of citizens and civic organizations such as COBRA, to assure continuing quality of life as this development continues. You have an opportunity today to review a project which will take a currently undeveloped vacant tract of land and develop a series of single-family homes. As has been presented to you, the proposed project would be developed by a well-respected national entity, Toll Brothers, who has presented their plans to surrounding homeowners, various county agencies, and COBRA. Voices have been heard, and there has been a great deal of give and take on all sides. I am confident that various county and state agencies will be overseeing and regularly reviewing reports that this development to assure the safety and well-being of all surrounding neighborhoods and the county at large. I am confident in our county, state, and potentially federal agencies to do that. I am personally impressed by the use of a plan with a relatively low housing density and significant thought toward common recreational areas. It is my belief that this proposal, with appropriate county and state oversight, would add significantly to all surrounding neighborhoods and residents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, you're recognized.
Well, my speech says good morning, but I'm going to say good afternoon, Mayor Sachs, Vice Mayor Marino, our commissioner, Commissioner Weiss, and all other members of the Palm Beach County Commission. My name is Sophia Youngberg. I live at 4214 Pinecone Lane, and I've lived there for 41 years. For those of you that are not as good at math as I am, that's since 1983. I do not live on the golf course, but I am not so naive as to think that I will not breathe or feel the effects of the poisonous dirt that will be delivered to my doorstep via contaminated blowing dirt and flooding on our streets. I have been to the golf course area that you were talking about in Lake Worth. Those people's houses are contaminated. They cannot even enjoy their properties. They cannot get in their pools. The dirt is coming into their homes. I have spoken to several of them. I am the caretaker for my 5-year-old grandson, who spends many days a week with me, and as I watched him in the swimming pool yesterday with his grandfather, I thought about this speech today. I will also be the caretaker for another baby that is on its way at the end of October. My husband suffers from chronic asthma. The major source of exposure for my neighbors and my family is ingestion of these compounds by breathing them in. But toxafen, for instance, does not dissolve well in water, so swimming in our pools and swallowing that water will be a very toxic cocktail. In fact, there will be no swimming in our pools for the years during construction. Dose, duration, age, and state of health all contribute to whether we are harmed by these chemicals. Exposing the children who live in and around Cypress Creek to these poisonous chemicals is irresponsible. Children cannot clear toxins well. They are overexposed easily due to their small body mass, and they explore their world by putting everything into their mouths. They're developing vulnerable brains, and I, as a teacher of almost 40 years, can assert this, should not be exposed to chemicals that threaten the brain's very structure. The negative impact of early chemical exposure is long-lasting and well documented. We know that Palm Beach County is allowing golf course conversions, but the Cypress Creek community is unique due to its age and its history, and the fact that the golf course is intertwined with our homes. It's not like the golf courses that are on a square piece of property at the corner of the homes. Our golf course intertwines our homes. How can we sacrifice our children to these chemicals that we know that will be unearthed for many, many years? Toll Brothers has told us as many as 8 years.
Thank you so much,
For the
ma'am. I
sake of our
appreciate
children,
your
please
service
deny
and your
this
opinion.
project.
At this time, we are going to break until 1:30. I'll see you all back here. Thank you very much. Greg, you got an interesting district, nice people. though.
Very nice people.
Nice people.
Thank you.